It began in darkness, a chaos of gunfire, searchlights, and flame reflected across black water. In November 1942, in the steaming, shark-infested seas of the South Pacific, the fate of the war in the Pacific hung in the balance. The island of Guadalcanal, little more than a strip of jungle and coral in the Solomon Islands, had become the most important piece of land on Earth. To the Americans, it was the first step toward halting the Japanese Empire's advance across the Pacific. To the Japanese, it was a sacred ground that could not be lost. And around it, in the narrow channels, sailors would come to call Iron Bottom Sound. The two greatest navies in history clashed in a series of brutal close-quarters battles that turned the night sea into a furnace of destruction. It was a fight without mercy, the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, where courage, confusion, and sacrifice collided beneath the tropical moon, and where the course of the Pacific War began to turn. The struggle for Guadalcanal began 3 months earlier, in August 1942, when Marines stormed ashore in America's first major offensive of the Second World War. Their objective was an unfinished airfield, Henderson Field, built by the Japanese and vital to controlling the sea lanes between the United States and Australia. The landings caught Japan by surprise, but the victory was far from complete. From the jungles inland and from the sea beyond, the Japanese counterattacked, again and again. Day by day, the Marines clung to the island, low on supplies, fighting hunger, disease, and a relentless enemy. Every ton of ammunition, every gallon of fuel, every life-saving crate of food had to cross hundreds of miles of ocean through waters stalked by submarines, aircraft, and the Japanese Navy. Whoever controlled those waters would decide the fate of Guadalcanal, and perhaps the Pacific itself. By November, both sides understood what was at stake. Japan assembled a massive task force under Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, including battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, all tasked with one goal: to bombard Henderson Field and wipe out the American foothold once and for all. Facing them was the U.S. Navy, battered from earlier defeats, but burning with resolve. Under Admirals Daniel Callaghan and Norman Scott, a patchwork fleet of cruisers and destroyers stood between the Japanese and the island. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and exhausted, but they would not retreat. On the night of November 13th, 1942, the two fleets met in one of the most violent and chaotic naval engagements ever fought. The night was moonless, the visibility poor, radar was still new, and confusion reigned. Suddenly, searchlights flicked on, cutting through the darkness, and the sea erupted in fire. At ranges so close that ships nearly collided, American and Japanese vessels exchanged salvos that lit the night sky like a storm of lightning. Shells screamed through the air. Torpedoes streaked through the black waves. The Japanese battleship Hai was hit again and again, her bridge shattered, her decks aflame. But American ships paid dearly. The cruisers Atlanta and San Francisco were battered, and Admiral Callaghan himself was killed at his command post. For an hour the ocean became a furnace of chaos, ships colliding, crews shouting through smoke and flame. When dawn rose over Iron Bottom Sound, both fleets were shattered, but the Japanese bombardment force had been turned back. The Marines on Guadalcanal still held their airfield. Yet the battle was not over. The Japanese would return again the next night, determined to finish the job. On November 14th and 15th, another series of night battles unfolded, equally ferocious, equally costly. The U.S. battleships Washington and South Dakota, under Admiral Willis Lee, steamed into the fray against a new Japanese bombardment force led by the battleship Kirishima. Radar guided the American guns through the darkness, and for the first time in the Pacific War, the old doctrine of night fighting was broken by technology. In minutes, Washington's 16-inch guns turned Kirishima into a burning wreck, sinking her beneath the waves. Japanese reinforcements denied their cover, were bombed and strafed by American aircraft from Henderson Field the next morning. Transports were destroyed, soldiers drowned or scattered across the sea. What began as an attempt to retake the island had become a disaster. When the smoke finally cleared, the waters north of Guadalcanal were littered with wreckage, twisted hulls, drifting lifeboats, and oil fires that burned for days. The Americans had lost 8 ships and more than 1,600 men. The Japanese had lost nearly twice as many, 2 battleships, 3 destroyers, and thousands of irreplaceable sailors and soldiers. The sea was so thick with wreckage and corpses that survivors later said it looked as if the ocean itself had turned to steel. The sailors who fought there would forever call it Iron Bottom Sound for the ships and men that now slept upon its floor. The Naval Battle of Guadalcanal was not a single clash, but a culmination, the final, decisive moment in a campaign that had tested the will of both nations. For Japan, it was the end of the offensive. Their losses in ships, planes, and trained crews could never be replaced. For the United States, it was the first great victory of a long, hard war. Proof that the Japanese Navy could be stopped, that courage and endurance could overcome experience and fear. The balance of power in the Pacific began to shift. From that point forward, Japan would fight on the defensive, its empire shrinking with every passing month. But for the men who fought there, victory came at a terrible price. The heat, the fear, the blinding light of explosions on the Black Sea, it stayed with them for the rest of their lives. Guadalcanal was more than a battle. It was a crucible, where sailors and soldiers alike were forged in hardship and loss. They fought for an island they could barely pronounce, for a cause they could scarcely see, and for a freedom that would echo across the Pacific for generations. Tonight we sail once more into those haunted waters, to the ships that burned in the dark, to the voices that called across the radio in chaos, to the bravery that refused to die even when surrounded by fire. This is the entire story of the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, the clash that broke the back of Japan's expansion, that turned the tide of the Pacific War, and that turned a nameless sound into sacred ground. Before we begin, tell me, where in the world are you tuning in from, and what time is it for you tonight? The Solomon Islands rest in the warm embrace of the South Pacific, a necklace of emerald isles scattered across waters that shimmer like glass. Their shores are laced with coconut palms, their interiors heavy with rainforests where rivers whisper down to the sea. For centuries they lay quiet, known mainly to those who fished their coasts or passed them by in merchant ships. By 1942, however, their quiet had vanished into the designs of distant empires. To Japan they were a stepping stone toward dominance of the Pacific. To the Allies, they were the line beyond which defeat might come. The still lagoons and calm evenings concealed a coming storm. Men on both sides scarcely knew the islands themselves, yet they came to see them as decisive ground. The ocean was the stage, and these islands the fragile anchor points. And so the war's gaze fell on Guadalcanal, an island waiting in silence for what history would demand of it. The geography was both beautiful and unforgiving. Steep mountains ran like spines through the larger islands, draped in mist that clung to their summits at dawn. The coasts were carved with mangroves and reefs, dangerous for ships that did not respect them. Rain fell often, turning paths into rivers of mud, and the jungle grew thick enough to swallow sound. The sea lanes, however, opened toward vital routes to Australia in the south, to the Central Pacific in the north, and to Asia beyond. Whoever held the Solomons would command both the air and the ocean in this corner of the world. Japan sought to seal off Australia and break Allied supply lines, while the Allies sought to protect them. These opposing aims gave the islands a weight far beyond their size. What once were quiet villages became the hinges of global destiny, and all the while the forest and sea simply breathed, patient and unmoved. Guadalcanal itself lay near the center of this chain, broad enough to host ambition and close enough to matter. Its name, though unfamiliar to most at the time, would soon echo through homes far across the seas. For Japan it was the site chosen to build an airfield, one that could extend their reach over vast distances. For the Allies that airfield posed a threat that could not be ignored, for it pointed like a spear toward vital lifelines. Beneath the island's volcanic soil and thick canopy, workers cut and cleared, while ships offshore delivered supplies under watchful eyes. Few on those ships imagined that history would one day weigh each stroke of their labor. Yet the airfield rising there was not just a construction project, but a signal. It told the world that these waters were no longer empty, and in that signal, the quiet calm of the South Pacific began to thin. The ocean surrounding Guadalcanal had its own stories, older than the war, and untouched by maps of strategy. It was a sea filled with currents that swirled between the islands, a place where sudden storms might sweep across without warning. Fishermen who had known its moods for generations spoke of its power, its generosity, and its danger. Now fleets approached these waters, crewed by men who did not know its secrets. American sailors called the long channel between islands the Slot, a name both simple and foreboding. Japanese sailors moved through it under cover of night, their ships slipping like shadows across the black waves. The water's vastness offered both safety and peril, hiding enemies and revealing them at the same time. To sail here was to surrender to its rhythms, trusting radar, lookouts, and chance. This was the ocean before the storm, calm yet full of unseen weight. And within that calm, the outlines of conflict began to take shape. The world beyond these islands was also pressing in. Though the sea remained serene, Japan had taken vast territories across Asia and the Pacific, victories strung together like beads on a chain. Allied forces, battered and retreating, searched for the moment when the tide could turn. Australia felt the shadow looming to its north, and America felt the challenge pressing closer across half the globe. To lose the Solomons might sever hope, while to hold them might promise survival. Guadalcanal's airfield, half built, seemed to mark the very tipping point of that balance. Few places so small had ever drawn such focus or carried such consequence. Yet here among palms and rivers, destiny was being prepared in silence. Villagers watched the growing bustle with quiet eyes, unsure of what it foretold, and through it all, the ocean's surface remained unbroken, as if indifferent to human intent. At dusk the islands seemed timeless, their horizons glowing in shades of violet and rose. Night brought a ceiling of stars so sharp they seemed etched into the sky. These skies would soon hold the roar of engines and the flash of gunfire, but for now they offered only peace. On shore, the airfield stretched a little further each day, a strip of earth cut into the green. Out at sea, Allied ships gathered strength, drawn into the orbit of this small contested ground. The stillness of evenings belied the nervous anticipation humming in distant command posts. For commanders, the islands were no longer distant dots, but urgent markers of survival. For the sailors soon to come, they were unknown, unnamed, yet already shaping their fates. The air was heavy, the water calm, the world suspended in waiting, and into this balance war would soon step. There is a kind of silence that comes before upheaval, not empty, but full of presence. It is the silence of winds shifting, of unseen forces preparing to meet. In the Solomons, that silence settled heavily in mid-1942. Each sunrise brought the illusion of peace, yet each nightfall carried whispers of what approached. The men who would fight here were not yet assembled, but their paths were already converging. In the still coves, ships lay at anchor, their crews unaware of the ferocity ahead. In jungle villages, children played as they always had, unaware that their home would become known across oceans. The waters lapped gently on the reefs, constant and unchanged. The stage was prepared, though none yet knew the script that would be written. And with each passing tide, the calm carried its secret deeper. For the Allies, Guadalcanal represented more than strategy. It became a symbol of defiance. To step forward here was to declare that retreat would end, that hope could still be claimed. For Japan, to hold Guadalcanal was to keep its shield extended and its empire intact. The island was no longer just an island, but a question of future and fate. Around the world, eyes that had never heard the word Guadalcanal would soon focus on it. In Washington, in Tokyo, in Canberra, the name was repeated with growing urgency. Yet on the island itself, nothing broke the natural rhythm of waves and wind. The jungle hummed with insects, the rivers rolled gently to the sea, and the reefs shimmered beneath the sun. Nature remained calm, untouched by human urgency, and in that calm the storm gathered, unseen but certain. And so the first chapter of Guadalcanal's story was written in stillness. The ocean carried no sign of the fleets that would soon scar its surface. The palms whispered in winds that had blown long before warships came. The earth waited, holding the weight of footsteps not yet made. The island did not ask to be chosen, yet history placed its burden here. Beneath the calm, decisions were forming that would alter the Pacific forever. Men would soon come to know the waters, the reefs, and the forests in ways they could never forget. Their struggles would fill the silence with thunder, yet that time had not yet arrived. For now the Solomons remained serene, the Pacific wide and quiet, and into this quiet, the story of the battle slowly begins to unfold. The long channel of water that threaded through the Solomon Islands came to be known as the Slot. It stretched like a dark vein between green mountains, running from the northwestern tip of the islands down toward Guadalcanal. At night the waters seemed endless, the sky above a canopy of stars that offered little guidance for those sailing below. Japanese ships learned these waters quickly, slipping down the channel under the cover of darkness. They carried supplies, reinforcements, and sometimes destruction itself. The Allies soon gave this nightly route a name filled with dread: the Tokyo Express. To the men waiting on Guadalcanal, its arrival meant more enemies and more uncertainty. To the sailors who patrolled nearby, it meant searching for shadows that vanished before morning came. The Slot became more than a passage, it became a riddle of the sea, and within that riddle, the first signs of anxiety began to take root. The Japanese had mastered the art of moving quickly through narrow waters, guided by skill, discipline, and experience. Their destroyers sliced the waves with precision, making use of speed and night to cloak their movements. Radar was still in its infancy, unreliable, and often misunderstood, leaving Allied ships groping in the dark. Lookouts strained their eyes against the horizon, knowing that a moment's lapse could mean disaster. To the Japanese, the darkness was not an enemy, but an ally, a veil that gave them advantage. To the Allies it was a suffocating weight, pressing down on every watch. Each moonless night became a test of nerves, a waiting game that stretched hours into eternity. The water whispered quietly around the ships, concealing both friend and foe. Fear took on the shape of uncertainty, silent yet heavy, and always the slot lay before them, deep and unknowable. In the early months of the struggle, the Tokyo Express seemed unstoppable. Supplies and men arrived on Guadalcanal almost nightly, sustaining the Japanese effort to retake the island. The runs were fast, efficient, and executed with a confidence that unsettled Allied commanders. Each delivery meant more soldiers to face in the jungles, more hands to strengthen the enemy's resolve. For the Marines clinging to Henderson Field, it felt like a tide that never ebbed. They counted the ships they could not stop, measured the power they could not deny. Meanwhile, the sea itself remained calm, its surface reflecting stars as if nothing at all were happening. But below that surface was a war of nerves, strategy, and endurance. The Tokyo Express had become a symbol of Japanese dominance in the Solomons, and that dominance cast long shadows into every Allied decision. The Allies were not blind to the threat, yet their responses faltered in the early days. American ships were newer to the night battles, less trained in the art of silent maneuvering. Crews struggled to adapt, commanders hesitated in the unfamiliar dark, and losses weighed heavily on morale. Even the memory of Savo Island haunted their thoughts, a reminder of how swiftly disaster could strike. To challenge the Tokyo Express seemed almost to invite misfortune. Still, they knew the runs could not continue unchecked. If left unbroken, the Japanese supply lines would overwhelm Henderson Field and doom the campaign. The calm surface of the Slock carried this tension with quiet inevitability. Sailors whispered about it as though it were a living presence, one that listened to their fears, and night after night the Japanese came, swift and unseen. In the mind of each sailor, the Slot was not just water but a shadowed adversary. Its narrowness amplified sound, every wave echoing louder than it should, every splash sounding like an approaching ship. The jungle ridges lining its edges seemed to lean inward, as if listening to the movements below. Stories passed among the men about ghostly fleets moving like phantoms through the darkness. Even those who had never seen the Tokyo Express felt its weight in rumor and in dread. Officers spoke of it in measured tones, but their men heard the unease behind their words. The Slot became a legend while the battle was still young, a place of fear and fascination intertwined. Each night's silence was broken only by engines far off, too faint to stop, too close to ignore. The water seemed to hold its breath, as if it too anticipated the clash to come. And within that held breath, the rising tension grew sharper. The Japanese strategy was simple, but it thrived in the environment. Fast destroyers brought men and supplies close to shore, then vanished before dawn revealed their presence. Sometimes heavier warships followed, their guns ready to silence Henderson Field. If the chance arose, the rhythm of these runs gave the Allies little rest, for they never knew when the night might bring confrontation. Patrols scoured the waters but often returned with nothing. Their eyes sore and nerves frayed. The Slot was too long, too full of hiding places, too adept at sheltering its guests. The Japanese seemed to emerge from the horizon itself, then disappear as though swallowed whole. This cycle pressed down on the defenders, who grew weary of chasing shadows. Each failure added to the impression of Japanese mastery at sea, and in that mastery Allied doubts deepened. Yet even as the Japanese maintained their hold, the Allies began to learn. Mistakes, though costly, sharpened awareness. Crews became more accustomed to the darkness, radar operators more confident in their strange new instruments. Commanders studied the patterns of the express, noting times, routes, and habits. Slowly, the fear shifted into determination, though it remained tempered by caution. The slot was no less dark, the nights no less endless, but understanding grew from experience. The men clung to hope that the tide would eventually turn. For them, each failed attempt was not simply defeat, but a lesson hidden in shadow. The Pacific seemed to whisper that patience mattered as much as strength, and in that whisper, the seeds of resistance began to grow. The slot remained what it had always been, a channel of water under the stars, but now it held within it the weight of countless intentions. Every ship that entered its waters carried the hopes of one nation and the fears of another. Every night's passage added another thread to the web of conflict tightening around Guadalcanal. The Tokyo Express was not invincible, though it felt that way in those early weeks. The Allies would soon find ways to strike, though the cost would be steep. The ocean was already preparing to witness greater clashes, ones that would decide far more than a single supply run. The slot, dark and constant, would become the setting for duels of fire and steel. But for now, it was still the realm of shadows, its mysteries unsolved. And as the Express continued to run, the storm drew closer. The first great test of the Allied fleets in the Solomon Islands came not at Guadalcanal itself, but nearby at Savo Island. This small, rounded island lay in the waters between Tulagi and Guadalcanal, quiet and unassuming, its ridges covered in palms and low hills. Yet its position made it a watchful sentinel over the sea lanes that carried reinforcements and supplies to the newly landed Marines. In August of 1942, Allied forces had only just begun their hold on Guadalcanal, still uncertain, still fragile. Their ships stood guard through restless nights, heavy cruisers and destroyers lying in anchor near the dark island. The men aboard believed their presence would shield the troops ashore, and for a time that belief seemed steady. Yet in the night the ocean often disguises intent, and dangers move unseen beneath the stars. From the north a Japanese force sailed with purpose, swift and silent, and thus began the haunting memory of Savo. The Allied fleet was multinational, drawing strength from American, Australian, and other ships. Their crews were determined, though still untested, in the strange, cloaked warfare that the Pacific would demand. Few of them had fought in night waters, where only starlight and chance guided the eye. Their commanders believed they were prepared, but preparation in theory differs from the silence of a dark sea. Lookouts strained their vision, though fatigue made the hours heavy, and the vastness of the water dulled sharpness of attention. The quiet seemed to reassure, yet that quiet was also a mask. The Japanese, trained for such moments, approached with discipline, each ship moving in harmony. Their path took them through the slot, past the reefs, and into the waters guarded by the Allied pickets. No alarm was raised in time, for no alarm could pierce the hush of that night. And in that hush, the first shadow of disaster began to lengthen. When the Japanese squadron finally descended upon the Allied ships, it was sudden and overwhelming. The darkness split with fire and confusion rippled across the anchored vessels. Crews scrambled in disarray, unsure of the enemy's direction, unsure even of the number of ships pressing in. Signals flashed, orders tangled, and the sea itself seemed to swallow clarity. In those moments, training and courage could not outweigh surprise and disorientation. The Japanese attack was swift, their ships maneuvering with precision, learned from years of preparation. Several Allied cruisers were struck before they could bring their guns effectively to bear. The night became a blur of frantic shouts and distant thunder, chaos drifting through the black water. Yet beneath that chaos was a deeper silence, the silence of inevitability pressing down, and in that silence the balance of confidence began to tilt. By the time dawn spread across the horizon, the cost of the night became painfully clear. Several Allied cruisers lay beneath the waves, their absence marked only by oil and drifting debris. Survivors clung to rafts or swam among the wreckage, their eyes wide with disbelief at the suddenness of their fate. For many it was their first taste of the Pacific War's harsh reality, a lesson written not in words but in loss. Commanders who had believed in their vigilance now wrestled with the weight of failure. The Marines ashore looked to the sea and felt a tremor of uncertainty at their protector's vulnerability. The Japanese had withdrawn as swiftly as they had struck, leaving emptiness in their wake. The waters around Savo were calm again, as if nothing had ever disturbed them. Yet the calm felt different now, heavier, edged with unease. And in that unease, the true meaning of Savo settled like a shadow. The memory of the battle clung to every sailor who later entered the slot. They spoke of it quietly, often with reverence, as though the waters themselves carried the echo of that night. The loss of ships and men was not just a tally of numbers, but a wound upon confidence. Even victories elsewhere could not erase the deep impression left by Savo. It was a reminder that the sea belonged to no one, and that mastery could be claimed in an instant by the prepared. Rumors spread quickly, growing larger in the telling, until Savo became almost myth among the fleets. Men stationed there afterward could not pass the island without recalling its grim lesson. The ocean, serene by day, became sinister by night, its silence no longer trusted. In that silence sailors felt the presence of those who had been lost, and so the shadow lingered, shaping thoughts and decisions to come. For Allied commanders, Savo Island became both humiliation and teacher. They studied what had gone wrong, analyzing the watch, the readiness, and the failures of coordination. The cost was high, yet it forced a reckoning with the demands of night fighting. Radar still new would be emphasized more, and crews would learn to trust its signals despite their doubts. Training shifted, discipline hardened, and commanders approached the slot with deeper caution. The Japanese, for their part, carried pride from the success, believing their tactics unassailable in the night. Yet victories can also plant overconfidence, a seed that grows unnoticed until the soil shifts. Thus Savo shaped both sides, pressing one toward vigilance and the other toward assumption. The waters had spoken, though in whispers only the attentive could hear, and in those whispers the course of future battles was being traced. The island itself, silent and small, became a witness none could forget. To the villagers who lived on its shores, the night of fire was bewildering, a sudden storm of light and sound vanishing as quickly as it arrived. To the world beyond, reports of the defeat struck like a chill wind across distant homes. Families received word of losses they did not yet understand, and the name Savo Island began to carry weight far beyond the Pacific. The ships that guarded the Solomons seemed less certain, their armor less strong, their vigilance less secure. Yet even in defeat, resilience began to form, fragile but growing. The Pacific War was never one of easy triumphs, but of learning slowly at great cost. In that way, Savo became a first chapter written in hard ink, and like all chapters, it led onward to others, still unwritten, for the calm seas around the island still waited, as though expecting more. Savo Island's first flames did not decide the war, but they marked it indelibly. They revealed the depth of the challenge and the darkness that still lay ahead. They etched into the minds of sailors the truth that the Pacific would give no easy victories. Each ship that later entered the slot carried this knowledge like a burden, but also like a shield. Awareness sharpened, Caution deepened, and lessons once ignored became essential. The Japanese had struck first, and they had struck hard, but the war would not be decided in one night. In time the balance would shift, though that time was not yet clear. For now, the memory of Savo travelled with every wave, a quiet warning in the water. The Pacific held its breath, carrying echoes of fire into the days to come, and those echoes drew the listener onward toward the next unfolding storm. On Guadalcanal, the land itself seemed alive, heavy with the breath of jungle and rain. The Marines who had landed there in August of 1942 found themselves in a world both beautiful and unforgiving. The ground was soft with mud after storms, and the air carried the constant hum of insects that never rested. Palms swayed gently in the wind, yet behind their calm outline lay a thick canopy that concealed movement and sound. The men cleared ground with steady effort, carving out a defensive ring around a rising airfield called Henderson Field. This airfield became the heart of their hope, a strip of earth scraped into being with sweat and urgency. Without it, they knew their position would be a lonely outpost, cut off from the sea and sky. With it, they believed they could hold, even as the waves of war pressed against them. The land offered little comfort, but it offered purpose, and with each sunrise that purpose grew heavier. The men lived close to the earth, their shelters crude, their routines defined by survival. Rations were short and supplies uncertain, for the ocean decided whether ships could deliver them. Nights were filled with the sound of the jungle, where every rustle seemed a warning, and every silence carried weight. The air grew damp with rain that poured without pattern, soaking uniforms and softening boots. Days stretched long beneath the sun, which burned mercilessly on open ground, leaving men weary before their tasks were done. Yet amid hardship, a sense of determination settled, quiet but unyielding. They watched the airfield take shape and felt pride in its growth, even as fatigue pulled at their bodies. For them, Henderson Field was not just earth and steel. It was the promise that they would not be abandoned. Their eyes returned to it again and again, as though its presence steadied their hearts, and in that steadying they found strength. Far offshore, the fleets moved with a rhythm that mirrored the struggle on land. Allied ships prowled the waters, their presence a shield that was at once vital and fragile. Each day the men ashore wondered if the ships could stay, or if they would vanish again as they had after the first landings. The memory of Savo Island lingered in their thoughts, reminding them how easily protection could disappear. Yet whenever Allied ships returned, bringing supplies or covering fire, relief washed through the Marines like fresh water. The sea, however, was no less contested than the land. Japanese warships moved by night, while transports dared approach by day only under great risk. The fate of the island depended on this constant struggle beyond the horizon, where sailors they would never meet fought battles unseen. The jungle and the ocean, though separate, became bound together in the same story, and that story unfolded in silence and uncertainty. The Marines felt their fate tied to the distant thunder of naval guns. When sounds drifted from the sea at night, they paused and listened, trying to guess the outcome of battles beyond their sight. Sometimes the morning brought news of Allied success, and spirits rose with cautious hope. At other times, rumors of disaster reached them, and the air grew heavy with worry. Yet in both victory and defeat, their task remained unchanged: hold the airfield at any cost. The Japanese pressed from the jungle, their presence constant though often unseen. Supplies came through at risk, sometimes plentiful, sometimes scarce, shaping every meal and every plan. The men measured time not by clocks, but by the rhythm of incoming raids, and the flights that left Henderson's runway. Each day they waited for word from the sea, knowing their survival was never theirs alone. And in that waiting, patience became their quiet companion. Henderson Field became more than an airstrip. It became a lifeline that joined land and sea together. From its rough surface, American planes rose like guardians, striking at ships that dared to approach too close. The men called them the Cactus Air Force, a name both humble and proud, drawn from the code name for the island itself. Their presence gave the Marines comfort, for every takeoff was a sign that their defense still stood. Yet those planes needed fuel, ammunition, and maintenance, and those needs tied them once more to the vulnerable convoys at sea. Thus, the fate of the airfield and the fate of the fleets were inseparable, each dependent upon the other's endurance. When planes returned scarred from combat, men rushed to patch them with whatever they had. When ships appeared offshore carrying supplies under threat, the airmen rose to guard them. The cycle repeated, weaving land and sea into one fabric of survival. And in that fabric, every thread was fragile. The Japanese sought to sever that fabric, striking both jungle lines and ocean routes with unrelenting intent. At night, their destroyers slipped down the slot, bringing men and shells meant to crush Henderson Field. From the darkness came bombardments that shook the ground, tearing at defenses and spirits alike. Yet when dawn broke, the airfield remained, its runway scarred but not destroyed. Each failed attempt deepened the resolve of the Marines, who grew used to nights of fire, followed by mornings of rebuilding. Hunger gnawed, exhaustion weighed, but the will to hold grew stronger than either. The men ashore learned to trust not in certainty, but in persistence. And persistence, they discovered, could be as steady as stone. Even when the sea seemed lost, the airfield reminded them of their purpose, and in that reminder, they endured. The bond between the Marines and the unseen sailors grew into a quiet kinship. Neither group could see the full measure of the other's struggle, yet each knew they were bound together. When a convoy made it through, the men on land felt gratitude deeper than words. When Henderson's planes rose to cover ships offshore, the sailors felt the same relief. Both knew that without the other, defeat was certain. This shared dependence brought a kind of unity, stretching across jungle and ocean. In moments of doubt, they reminded themselves of this bond, fragile yet real. The war in the Solomons was not a single battle but a chain of endurance, each link relying on another. And in that chain, both land and sea pulled together against the same weight. Slowly hope grew from this interwoven struggle. The calm of the island was deceptive, as was the calm of the sea. Both carried within them the quiet pulse of coming storms, storms that would test the endurance of all who remained. The Marines clung to Henderson Field, while the fleets prepared to face the shadows of the slot once again. Each side watched the other, neither yielding, neither certain of the final outcome. The Pacific held its breath, as though waiting for a decision that could not yet be made. For those ashore, the struggle was day by day, hour by hour, yet their eyes often turned toward the horizon. For those at sea, the struggle was mile by mile, night by night, yet their thoughts often turned toward the airfield. The two halves of the battle were bound, and neither could end without the other. The calm endured, but it was a fragile calm, and into that fragility, the storm quietly gathered its strength. The waters around Guadalcanal seemed to hold their breath as both sides prepared for what was coming. Ships gathered quietly, their crews aware of the weight that rested on every maneuver and every decision. The Allies had learned from Savo, their nerves sharpened by the memory of loss and uncertainty. Across the Channel, the Japanese prepared with equal care, confident in the precision and discipline of their formations. The nights stretched long, the air humid and thick, carrying the distant scent of rain and salt. Commanders read maps and charts under lamplight, tracing imagined lines of advance and retreat, their faces etched with thought. The ocean itself appeared calm, but beneath that surface currents swirled with unseen motion, a metaphor for the tension building above. Both fleets moved as though drawn by gravity toward an inevitable meeting, neither wishing it, yet unable to avoid it. Every man aboard each ship felt the quiet hum of expectation, heavy but unspoken, and in that expectation, the first threads of the coming storm began to gather. Admiral Daniel J. Callaghan stood quietly on his bridge, reviewing the reports that had arrived through the night. The responsibility of holding Guadalcanal weighed on him, and he measured each decision against the lives of those he commanded. Rear Admiral Norman Scott, nearby, studied the horizon, searching for any hint of the enemy's movement. Their fleets were diverse in skill and experience, yet united in a singular purpose to protect Henderson Field and the Marines who relied on them. On the Japanese side, Vice Admiral Hiroaki Abe and Rear Admiral Kiyohide Shima moved with precision, their minds set on a clear objective. Discipline was paramount, and every sailor and officer knew their role in the hours to come. The air seemed to pulse with anticipation, a rhythm that matched the heartbeat of every man aboard. Lanterns flickered in the holds and cabins, while engines hummed low beneath the deck. Even the ocean seemed to sense the concentration of intent, its waves steady yet deep, and into this concentration the first hints of movement began to stir. Ships moved with careful deliberation, threading through the narrow channels of the Solomons with quiet purpose. The night was filled with the hum of engines and the occasional call from a lookout, soft sounds that belied the magnitude of what was approaching. Orders passed along lines of communication, measured and repeated to ensure clarity. Sailors checked equipment, tested radios, and verified readiness. Each small act a contribution to a larger design. The fleets were as much a community as a force of war, each individual part reinforcing the whole. Tension lay thick in the air, yet it was a controlled tension, a focus that sharpened senses rather than fraying them. The waters glistened faintly in the moonlight, reflecting the ships that would soon enter conflict. Stars glittered overhead, serene and indifferent, as though watching events unfold without judgment. For the men aboard, the night carried both fear and determination, and in that delicate balance, the moment of reckoning drew nearer. The anticipation was not only in preparation, but in the quiet observation of each side. Callaghan and Scott monitored reports from scouts and reconnaissance aircraft, piecing together a picture that remained incomplete. Abe and Shima did the same, their radar and signals offering hints of the Allied positions. Each leader weighed risk against opportunity, knowing the slightest miscalculation could shift fortune in an instant. Maps of the channels, islands, and reefs were memorized, imagined paths plotted over and over in thought. The ocean was alive with possibility, each swell and current carrying unknown consequences. Sailors and officers alike spoke in measured tones, exchanging small details and reassurances. The airfield on Guadalcanal was the heart that beat beneath all calculations, fragile yet essential. And as reports filtered in, the sense of inevitability grew, a quiet hum in every mind. The storm had not yet arrived, but it pressed close. Ships carried more than guns and fuel. They carried the hopes and fears of every man on board. Meals were taken in silence, each bite measured against the labor and strain of the hours ahead. Sleep, when possible, came in brief moments, fleeting and shallow. Every sound became magnified, a creak in the hull, a wave lapping against the bow, a distant bird calling across the water. These small details reminded sailors that the ocean could not be tamed, only navigated. Discipline held them steady, but their minds wandered to home, to families, to futures uncertain. On Guadalcanal, the Marines understood the same duality. Tension coupled with persistence, fear tempered by necessity. Each man on land or sea felt the gravity of decisions both large and small, and in that gravity they found focus, a quiet readiness that made calm purposeful rather than passive. The leaders understood the moral weight of what they commanded. Callaghan moved through reports with deliberate patience, aware that his decisions might protect or endanger dozens of lives. Scott reviewed gun readiness, positioning and coordination, each choice measured in heartbeat intervals. Abe and Shima did the same on the Japanese side, careful not to reveal weaknesses or allow opportunity to slip. The ocean carried their intentions, a vast and indifferent witness to human thought. Yet even as the fleets prepared, there was a shared rhythm, a subtle symmetry in how both sides approached the coming contest. Stars and waves continued their quiet existence, indifferent to the storms humans prepared to unleash. The tension was rising, palpable in the silence, a gentle but insistent hum beneath the night air. And with every decision, the shadow of the approaching tempest stretched a little further. Time seemed to slow as the fleets approached their rendezvous. Hours passed with the same unbroken monotony, yet each hour carried more weight than the last. Sailors paced decks, officers whispered calculations, and every movement seemed both urgent and deliberate. The ocean reflected each signal lamp, each distant engine, and each subtle maneuver with quiet clarity. The anticipation was shared across the miles, unseen yet universally felt by those awaiting contact. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, soft on faces and sails, as though aware of the tension pressing upon men below. Night and early morning blurred together, leaving only expectation. The approaching tempest was inevitable, and every mind knew it, and as the horizon darkened with the promise of movement, the fleets edged closer to destiny. In the quiet before the storm, the world seemed suspended. Guadalcanal's hills and forests whispered in the breeze, holding the weight of countless possibilities. The ocean's surface reflected the night sky, calm and unyielding, yet concealing the pulse beneath. Men aboard each ship understood that what was coming would test endurance, courage, and judgment. Each heartbeat felt measured, a reminder that the moment of action was near. Callaghan, Scott, Abe, and Shima all carried the burden of choices yet to be made. The night held both fear and clarity, a paradox of awareness sharpened by uncertainty. Waves rolled gently, indifferent to human concerns, while stars kept their silent vigil. And within that vigil, the fleets continued their inexorable approach toward each other, carrying the weight of history with them. The approaching tempest was not yet visible, yet it filled every thought, every glance, every heartbeat. Preparation had reached its peak, and the rhythm of the ocean seemed to echo the pulse of men awaiting contact. The waters of the Solomons remained deceptively serene, reflecting the first hints of dawn. Every ship was poised, every gun manned, every officer alert to the unknown. The tension of weeks now coalesced into a quiet, persistent presence, pressing on both land and sea. Within that presence lay the knowledge that the night ahead would change everything. Calm and expectation intertwined, forming a soft but unyielding prelude to action. And as the fleets drew ever closer, the listener feels the gentle rise of a storm yet to arrive, guiding them onward into the next chapter of unfolding history. The night of the 13th of November unfolded with a quiet inevitability, the darkness folding over the waters of the Solomons. like a heavy cloth. Ships moved through the channels with careful intent, yet the shadows blurred perception and blurred decisions alike. The hum of engines mixed with the distant whisper of waves, a subtle reminder that the ocean itself remained indifferent. In this darkness, moments stretched and twisted, as if time were dissolving into the water itself. Officers gave commands with measured voices, but every order risked being lost in the smoke and confusion. Explosions, distant and muffled, painted the night with sudden light. Brief as fireflies and twice as disorienting, men leaned over rails, listening to the pulse of metal on water, their senses strained by shadows and glimmering reflections. Ships collided unexpectedly, hulls scraping against each other with a sound that carried like thunder. The sea held them, supported them, and concealed them all at once, and in that concealment, chaos whispered softly, unrelenting yet hypnotic. Admiral Callaghan and Rear Admiral Scott moved amid their command, their eyes straining through darkness that offered no mercy. Each decision they made was a step along a knife edge, each calculation a fragile balance. They measured distances not in numbers but in instinct, relying on years of experience to guide movements where light could not. Around them, officers shouted and signals flickered, often delayed or misunderstood. The Japanese commanders Abe and Shima navigated the same night with similar reliance on instinct and training. The narrow waters seemed to shrink under the pressure of approaching fleets, amplifying every movement and every error. The roar of engines, the hiss of shells in the distance, and the occasional flare lighting the night, all combined into a strange, hypnotic rhythm. Men aboard felt the ocean move beneath them, carrying both threat and protection. And within this rhythm, the night itself became both adversary and witness, impartial yet attentive. The darkness pressed close, yet compelled focus as never before. Collisions came swiftly, startling, and precise. As if the water had decided to intervene, ships scraped past one another, their hulls grinding and bouncing in unpredictable ways. Crews scrambled, leaning into the rhythm of the hulls and waves, trying to stabilize movement without knowing exactly what lay ahead. Flares illuminated fleeting glimpses of distant ships, and shadows twisted like smoke across water and deck. The men relied on instinct more than calculation, their training tested against every unpredictable swell. Commands layered upon commands, sometimes conflicting, sometimes harmonizing in brief perfection. The ocean seemed to pulse with the energy of conflict, waves carrying sound and vibration that disoriented yet connected. Officers grasped maps and binoculars, only to find them of limited use in a world that had dissolved into smoke and light. Even amid disarray, there was a strange flow, a movement as organic as tidewater, and in that flow the night stretched onward, unyielding. The loss of leaders was felt immediately, a quiet shock that rippled across decks. Callaghan fell, struck in the midst of giving direction, leaving the command structure fragile and shifting. Scott too was taken, leaving others to inherit responsibility under impossible conditions. The Japanese experienced similar losses, though disciplined chains of command allowed them to adapt more fluidly. Ships without leaders became ghostly shapes on the water, moving yet uncertain, their crews driven by training and fear. Amid the confusion, smaller acts of courage surfaced, as sailors took initiative to navigate, adjust fire, and maintain cohesion. The smoke hung low, carrying the scent of heat and salt, softening the edges of every shape. Every decision now had weight, measured not just in strategy, but in lives suspended between night and ocean. And yet, even in loss, the rhythm of the battle persisted, a pulse beneath the chaos. The night moved steadily onward, neither yielding nor forgiving. Explosions erupted sporadically, lighting sections of the water with a pale, fleeting glow. The fire illuminated ships in brief clarity, revealing the vulnerability of vessels that seemed invincible by day. Men felt the heat on their faces, the vibration through their feet, and the pull of the water beneath, anchoring them in the present despite the uncertainty. The Japanese pressed forward, their formations twisting through darkness with disciplined motion. The Allied forces reacted as best they could, improvising movements and covering gaps. Sound became more important than sight. The creak of rigging, the slap of waves, the subtle pulse of distant engines guiding decisions. The ocean carried these sounds with deceptive softness, masking approach and masking retreat. Every sailor understood that visibility was a luxury denied to them, and they learned to trust intuition. And in this trust, the mind and body moved in tandem with the unpredictable rhythm of the night. The steel and shadow merged into one continuous experience. Amid the turmoil, Henderson Field and the Marines on shore waited with ears straining for news. The distant booms and flashes carried through the night, painting abstract impressions of struggle and uncertainty. They did not see the full battle, yet felt its impact through interrupted supplies and anxious messages. The night extended into hours that stretched like water across the horizon, each one filled with fleeting triumphs and sudden setbacks. Sailors aboard each ship discovered that calm thought had little place here. Adaptation became their only guide. Orders and counter-orders mingled, some arriving too late, some fortuitously timed, like notes in a complex melody. The sea embraced both sides equally, indifferent yet essential to their survival. Each wave and swell carried the ghosts of decisions, the echoes of choices made and missed. And through this embracing, the night held them all adrift, suspended between expectation and consequence. The storm of battle moved silently beneath their awareness. Small victories punctuated the confusion, offering brief clarity amidst the shadows. A destroyer maneuvered successfully, avoiding collision and holding position. A gun battery found its target, its fire illuminating a fleeting shape on water. Communications cleared briefly, and a plan shifted to match the fluidity of the situation. These moments were precious, fleeting stabilizations within the ongoing rhythm of chaos. Yet for every gain, another uncertainty arose, reminding all that the night was still sovereign. The sailors moved with quiet determination, tethered to each other by shared purpose and proximity. The ocean's surface remained deceptively calm, contrasting the tumult just above it. And in that contrast, the night deepened its hypnotic hold, carrying every heartbeat forward into the hours ahead. Every flicker of light or sound became a guidepost, soft yet compelling. When the first hints of dawn began to pale the sky, the night battle slowly released its hold. The chaos did not vanish, but it shifted, the intensity softening into aftermath. Ships that remained afloat carried the weight of exhaustion, their crews tempered by hours of near-continuous tension. The Japanese withdrew as planned, their formations intact enough to regroup, leaving behind a mixture of confusion and relief. For the Allies, the loss of leaders and vessels was a hard, silent reality, yet it brought clarity and a focus for the battles yet to come. The ocean, still dark beneath the rising sun, seemed to sigh, releasing some of its pressure while keeping its depth unchanged. Men on deck moved with quiet fatigue, voices softer, steps more deliberate, each aware of the lives they carried and the responsibilities they bore. The night had ended, yet its imprint lingered on every sailor and officer. And as the light grew, the world felt both fragile and resilient, a delicate balance poised for continuation. The night of steel and shadow left a profound impression that could not be erased. It had tested nerve, skill, and endurance, teaching lessons that would resonate in every subsequent engagement. Ships carried their scars quietly, water reflecting their battered forms with soft ripples. Sailors remembered not only loss but also the intricate choreography of survival within chaos. Commanders who survived pondered each choice, each misstep, each moment of fleeting control. The Pacific itself remained serene, offering only reflection and waves, while holding the memory of every decision within its depths. Henderson Field endured on shore, its presence a constant reminder of purpose and hope. And in that enduring presence, the narrative of Guadalcanal pressed onward, carrying every soul through shadow toward the next unfolding chapter of tension and survival. Morning arrived slowly over the waters of Guadalcanal, stretching its soft light across the remnants of the night's battle. The surface of the sea reflected gentle streaks of gold, yet it carried the quiet weight of broken ships and drifting debris. Smoke hung low, lingering over the silhouettes of vessels that had been damaged or sunk, their outlines blurred by the haze. Survivors clung to rafts or the edges of splintered decks, their faces tired but alert, eyes scanning for safety and comrades. The air smelled faintly of salt and heat, mingled with the lingering scent of fires, now dying in the gentle breeze. The ocean itself seemed to sigh, as though releasing the tension it had held through hours of chaos. Waves rolled steadily, carrying fragments of wood, metal, and human presence, moving silently as if acknowledging the night's intensity. Each man aboard, each survivor floating, felt the strange stillness, the pause that follows storms. And in that stillness, reflection took root, quiet yet persistent. The morning pressed forward gently, leading thoughts to consideration and quiet understanding. A cruise of surviving ships moved with measured care, assessing damage and accounting for those lost. Silence had settled over decks, a contrast to the frantic energy of hours before. Repairs began quietly, hands working with precision despite exhaustion, aware that the ocean would not wait for readiness. Officers communicated in calm tones, giving instructions with patience honed by necessity. The rhythm of life continued, yet each step carried the weight of memory from the night. The Japanese vessels had withdrawn, their intentions fulfilled, but leaving the wake of their passage visible for all to see. Mariners on both sides felt the peculiar intimacy of shared hardship, even if separated by conflict. The calm reflected the magnitude of what had occurred without need for commentary or embellishment, and in that calm the sea and sky seemed to allow a moment of exhale. The horizon stretched forward, inviting cautious movement toward what lay ahead. Survivors of the battle gathered where they could, their bodies fatigued and minds alert to subtle dangers. Floating rafts and makeshift platforms became temporary sanctuaries, carrying the weight of both loss and relief. The sun rose slowly, its warmth brushing against the skin of men who had faced the uncertainty of night and lived. Each splash of water against a hull or raft reminded them of the fragility of presence, the impermanence of all that had been. Quiet conversations passed between those who survived, whispers of shared experience that could not be fully understood by others. The sea mirrored their reflections, a soft, moving surface that held memory without judgment. Birds called faintly across the horizon, their sounds a gentle contrast to the echoes of night. There was no triumph in the morning, only the persistence of life, quiet and steady. And in that persistence hope found a subtle foothold, delicate but present. The day moved forward gently, carrying lessons and memories alike. Henderson Field rose quietly in the distance, a fixed point amid drifting uncertainty. The Marines on shore watched the water with a mixture of apprehension and cautious relief. Smoke and fire from the night's encounter still traced thin lines across the air, a reminder that the ocean held both danger and consequence. Messages of loss and survival traveled slowly between ships and shore, carried by small craft and signal. Each report added depth to the understanding of the battle, its costs felt in both bodies and spirit. The airfield, resilient yet scarred, became a symbol of persistence in the face of unrelenting challenges. The jungle beyond remained calm, concealing movement and reminding observers that the night's events were only a portion of what lay ahead. The light of dawn softened shadows, but it could not erase the memory of the night, and in the softening contemplation grew easier, allowing minds to rest momentarily before preparation resumed. The ocean reflected this gentle transition, carrying both grief and endurance with equal grace. Floating wreckage told stories without words, drifting slowly across the calm waters. Each fragment, each piece of timber or steel, held memory of the men who had been aboard, of choices made and paths taken. Waves nudged the debris gently, as if the sea itself were arranging the remnants into an order. Only it understood. Birds circled above, their calls faint against the low wind, signaling continuity amid disruption. Mariners traced familiar forms in the water, recognizing elements of ships now lost, their outlines softened by smoke and distance. The quiet allowed reflection to stretch, thoughts moving slowly like currents beneath the surface. Even in loss there was a rhythm, a pulse of life that endured despite chaos. The horizon held a pale light, promising that the day would proceed with measured certainty, and in that promise the sailors felt a gentle steadiness returning, a rhythm to carry them forward. The morning lingered, a soft bridge between the storm of night and the efforts of the day. The psychological weight of the night pressed gently yet persistently on all who remained, relief at survival mixed with mourning for those who had not, creating a quiet introspective tension. Conversations were hushed, punctuated by pauses that allowed memory to surface naturally. Officers and men alike reflected on the fleeting nature of control and the unpredictability of events. The ocean carried this weight without judgment, its movement steady, continuous, and impartial. Small acts of care and attention arose among survivors, a hand extended to steady a raft or guide a comrade through water. Even the smallest gestures became anchors in the drifting uncertainty. The sea accepted these gestures and returned them in quiet reassurance, rippling gently around those afloat. And in this quiet reassurance, hearts found space to exhale, to soften, if only for a moment. The dawn carried them forward into reflection and preparation. Ships that remained operational began to reorganize, their crews adjusting to new realities. Orders were refined, priorities reassessed, and positions measured against both loss and remaining strength. Engineers checked hulls and engines, making quiet calculations that ensured continued movement. Officers coordinated with shore elements, the bond between land and sea, reaffirmed by necessity. The ocean, still and reflective, seemed to allow patience, offering calm as a resource rather than a hindrance. Waves moved steadily, carrying the past night's echoes along with them, softening edges and easing tension. Mariners learned to read both silence and sound, finding comfort in the patterns of wind and tide. Messages passed with a gentle rhythm, reinforcing connections across distance. And as the day unfolded, the survivors discovered that calm could be as vital as courage, steadying hands and minds alike. The morning carried them forward, softly and deliberately. By mid-morning, the waters regained a sense of ordinary continuity. Though the imprint of night remained, ships moved deliberately, floating past remnants of the battle, with careful attention to both debris and memory. The wind lifted gently, dispersing smoke and bringing a faint scent of salt and heat. Observers on deck felt the subtle reassurance of stability, the soft pulse of waves beneath them grounding attention. Henderson Field remained intact, a quiet sentinel amidst drifting wreckage, a reminder of purpose and resilience. The sea reflected light with a gentle shimmer, each ripple a slow, hypnotic reminder that life endured. Conversations remained low, measured, and reflective, honoring both those lost and those who remained. Even the smallest wave seemed to hold the memory of the night, guiding attention without force. And in that guidance, minds and bodies found a gentle rhythm to follow. The dawn softened shadows, allowing the listener to exhale and prepare for the next tide of events. The mourning over wreckage was not an ending, but a pause, a space to gather strength and understanding. Reflection unfolded quietly across the waters, carried on wind, waves, and the subdued voices of men afloat and ashore. The sea whispered softly, moving debris and memory alike with steady patience. Each survivor absorbed lessons, weighed choices, and acknowledged the fragility and persistence of life. The horizon promised continuation, the day stretching forward with measured certainty. Henderson Field and the ocean remained steadfast companions to the men who had endured, their presence a quiet anchor. Light touched the water and smoke with equal softness, signaling both distance and continuity. And as the waters carried survivors onward, the listener feels the exhale of tension, a gentle pause before the story moves toward the next tide. The battle's imprint remains, but the morning offers a breath, soft and enduring. The stage is set for what comes next, as the Solomons await the unfolding of continued struggle. The USS Juno moved through the waters with the quiet dignity of a vessel aware of both purpose and fragility. Her decks were alive with routine, yet there was an unspoken awareness among the crew of what could be lost in a single moment. The Pacific around Guadalcanal held a soft, deceptive calm, the sea reflecting light, while masking danger beneath. Sailors carried out duties with practiced precision, moving among the hum of engines, the clink of equipment, and the gentle sway of waves. The Sullivans, 5 brothers serving together, moved through their shared responsibilities with the quiet cohesion of family and familiarity. Conversations passed softly, measured yet heavy, with the unspoken sense of stakes too large to articulate. The ocean's surface reflected the gold and pink of early morning, contrasting with the weight that lingered below. Every man aboard understood, in instinct and intuition, that the line between life and loss was slender. And in that slenderness, there was a peculiar clarity, a focus born of recognition and duty. The Juno carried on, a small world afloat in vast, patient waters. Through the day, reports of distant engagements reached the crew, faint echoes of encounters in the slot. Each report was a reminder that their mission was both vital and perilous. Carriers were more than ships. They were the extension of strategy, the engines of control in a theater defined by mobility and distance. Yet with that power came fragility, the knowledge that a single misstep could render them powerless. Men moved on deck with careful rhythm, checking planes, equipment, and readiness, their motions almost meditative. The Sullivans shared quiet words, supporting each other in ways beyond instruction or command. The ocean beneath them seemed steady, a constant pulse in contrast to the potential chaos surrounding. Waves lapped gently against the hull, carrying both reassurance and the subtle reminder of impermanence. And as the sun rose higher, the Juno pressed forward, carrying hope, duty, and the weight of all aboard. In that forward motion, the rhythm of anticipation deepened. The afternoon brought distant reports of enemy presence. Warnings carried on the wind and radio waves alike. Sailors paused to listen, adjusting to the flow of information and its implications. Every movement became measured, each decision tethered to strategy and the ever-present risk of sudden change. The Sullivans moved together through their posts, their shared bond quiet but unwavering, a human anchor amidst the uncertainty. The carrier's decks, usually humming with normal activity, held a subtle tension, a gentle alertness that permeated everything. The Pacific seemed to hold its breath, waves carrying information in invisible currents. Crew members checked machinery, recalibrated instruments, and aligned aircraft, each act small yet essential. The rhythm of preparation carried a soft hypnotic cadence, blending vigilance with routine. And in that cadence every sailor felt the delicate balance of power and fragility upon which their mission depended. The day moved slowly, carrying them toward inevitable change. As the hours passed, reports grew more urgent, indicating Japanese submarines in the broader theater. Decisions were communicated quietly, deliberately, the crew adapting without panic, guided by training and instinct. Officers traced courses and possibilities on charts, each adjustment a reflection of strategy's fragility. The Sullivans remained near one another, their bond unspoken yet profound, a source of steadiness amid the uncertainty. From below decks, engineers worked with methodical care, tending engines and systems that sustained the vessel's mobility. The ocean's surface rippled gently, indifferent to the human concerns above, reflecting clouds that drifted lazily in the sky. Each wave carried the weight of attention, a soft reminder that the world was larger than any single ship or crew. And in that reminder, perspective deepened, tension tempered by awareness of place in a vast, moving environment. The Juno moved steadily, unaware that its moment of fragility would soon arrive. The rhythm of anticipation persisted, slow and hypnotic, beneath the sun's warm light. When the fateful moment arrived, it came with quiet suddenness, subtle yet irrevocable. The ocean's surface, calm and reflective, became a mirror to an event that would shift the currents of memory. Crew members acted with trained precision, yet nothing could fully mitigate the force of what unfolded. The Sullivans, together as always, responded as instinct and bond dictated, their presence a quiet testament to familial strength. The carrier's structure, resilient but finite, absorbed impact and change with an unyielding rhythm, resisting the inevitable, yet not escaping it. Waves moved around the vessel, carrying fragments of the day and echoes of decision, softening edges without erasing consequence. Men above and below decks maintained focus, each small act reinforcing survival, human response intertwined with the ocean's subtle guidance. And in the quiet that followed the initial moment, reflection arose, deep and hypnotic, as the mind measured distance, loss, and endurance. The Juno's last breath was not loud, but it reverberated through those who remained, carried gently on the currents. The ocean held the memory softly, a quiet witness to the weight of history. The loss of the Sullivan brothers became a ripple, felt far beyond the carrier itself. Word traveled slowly, carried by voice and vessel. Yet each recipient felt the solemn rhythm of consequence. Families and comrades experienced the emotional weight of absence, while those remaining aboard drew closer, their bond quietly reinforced by shared experience. The ocean, patient and indifferent, reflected both grief and resilience in its gentle motion. Officers adjusted to the new reality. balancing sorrow with the necessity of ongoing mission and vigilance. Waves lapped with unchanging cadence, offering a soft backdrop for reflection and action alike. Crews recalibrated priorities, tending to both machinery and morale, sustaining what remained with quiet care. And in the wake of loss, life aboard the Juno continued, carried forward by training, purpose, and the hypnotic rhythm of the sea. Every heartbeat on board echoed in tandem with the subtle pulse of the Pacific. The day moved onward, soft and deliberate, toward the next unfolding challenge. The gradual attrition of carriers in the Solomons became evident in these moments, a subtle yet inexorable pattern. Each ship lost or damaged shifted the strategies of fleets and commanders, forcing careful consideration of risk and placement. Sailors understood that these vessels were precious, both symbols of power and instruments of survival. Exercises of caution, restraint, and judgment became daily rituals performed with meditative attention. The Pacific's surface mirrored this rhythm, calm yet carrying the weight of potential consequence beneath. Waves lapped softly, nudging thoughts toward preparation and awareness. Men and officers alike measured every decision against the quiet awareness of fragility. The rhythm of life aboard continued, deliberate, slow, and hypnotic, integrating loss into the ongoing cadence of duty. And through this awareness, the next steps in Guadalcanal's unfolding story emerged, soft yet inevitable. The ocean carried them gently toward anticipation and continuation. By evening, the memory of Juno's loss lingered as a subtle hum across the theater. Crews on other ships moved with increased vigilance, quietly integrating lessons of fragility into everyday motion. Every deck echoed with the pulse of attentiveness, every conversation imbued with the understanding of what could be lost. The Sullivan story became both caution and inspiration, a gentle reminder of the human bond amid strategic necessity. The sea reflected sunset in bands of gold and crimson, a slow, calming counterpoint to the tension still alive in minds and hearts. Waves continued their unbroken rhythm, carrying the weight of day, memory, and anticipation alike. Officers reviewed positions, resources, and strategy with quiet deliberation, sustaining readiness while honoring absence. And in this mixture of vigilance and reflection, the hypnotic pace of Guadalcanal's ongoing struggle persisted. The ocean cradled the rhythm of human endeavor, soft yet insistent forward movement, cautious and deliberate, became the quiet thread connecting loss to continuation. The final light of day softened the contours of all that remained afloat. Reflections glimmered across the water, carrying with them the memory of both action and restraint. The carriers, though diminished, continued to embody endurance and responsibility. Sailors moved with a rhythm born of habit, focus, and awareness of fragility, their motions a quiet testament to perseverance. The Pacific remained patient, accepting both the living and the memory of those lost into its gentle currents. The Sullivans' bond, though ended in presence, lived on in shared remembrance, and the subtle movements of all who witnessed. Across the theatre, commanders measured caution against necessity, learning the lessons of attrition without haste. And as the light faded, a soft calm settled over the ocean, carrying every reflection, every heartbeat, every gentle ripple forward. Guadalcanal's story continued, paced by patience, endurance, and the hypnotic rhythm of sea and sky. The night approached once more, hinting at new movement and challenges to come. The waters of the Solomons shifted subtly as Japanese planners prepared a new movement, a deliberate convergence of massive ships upon Guadalcanal. Hiei and Kirishima, battleships of imposing presence, moved with quiet authority, each vessel aware of its own power and vulnerability. The Pacific around them seemed to hold its breath, waves lapping softly against hulls as if whispering caution. Sailors aboard these ships moved with deliberate purpose, performing routines that were as much meditation as preparation. The mission was clear: to neutralize Henderson Field, to strike at the heart of the Marines' foothold on the island. Commanders considered tide, moon, and horizon, weighing each choice in a world where visibility was scarce and consequence immense. The crew felt the tension, unspoken yet present, an undercurrent that moved through decks, corridors, and engine rooms alike. Each man understood that their strength was immense, yet so was the fragility of success. And as Hiei and Kirishima drew closer to their course, a quiet dread settled over all who awaited the unfolding of events. The Pacific held them, patient and impartial, as the night approached once more. The approach was measured, almost hypnotic. As the battleships cut through the waters with relentless determination, waves rolled beneath their keels, a gentle but insistent reminder of the weight of every ton of steel and every decision made. Officers plotted courses with meticulous care, balancing aggression with preservation, aware that mistakes could echo across miles and hearts. Sailors moved through familiar rhythms, checking guns, communication, and readiness, their motions steady and unhurried, yet aware of urgency. The moonlight reflected softly on gun turrets and the curve of the deck, lending the ships a quiet majesty, even amid intent to destroy. The Pacific carried their passage with a measured calm, masking the enormity of potential consequences beneath a reflective surface. Each man aboard felt the pulse of anticipation, a rhythm that both steadied and unsettled, and in the hush of preparation, the sense of inevitability grew, subtle but persistent. Guadalcanal awaited, the island itself a silent witness to this gathering of immense power. The horizon stretched forward, darkening as evening approached, carrying the weight of expectation. Admiral AB considered his mission carefully, the fate of Henderson Field resting in part upon his decisions. His staff moved with quiet efficiency, passing information, updating positions, and confirming readiness with the measured patience of routine and discipline. The battleships responded to commands as extensions of thought, engines and hulls moving in harmony with intent. Sailors felt the subtle energy of leadership, a calm force that guided every motion and every glance. The Pacific seemed aware of this careful coordination, waves brushing hulls in consistent rhythm. Shadows lengthened as the sun dipped, softening the outlines of islands and reefs, adding a layer of quiet uncertainty to navigation. The anticipation of contact grew with the darkening sky, a tension felt in both anticipation and respect. Officers and crew alike understood that despite the scale of power, subtlety and awareness would determine success. And in this understanding, the ocean seemed to breathe along with them, steady and hypnotic. Each moment carried weight, measured as much in thought as in distance traveled. Below decks, engineers tended machinery with meticulous care, aware that their work would shape every outcome above. Steam and vibration pulsed gently, engines humming in soft hypnotic cadence that matched the thoughts of those on deck. The crew's movements were deliberate, rehearsed yet instinctive, a quiet meditation on continuity amid uncertainty. Gun crews inspected their positions, verifying angles, powder, and alignment, ready to respond when called. Even the hum of electricity and the faint creak of hulls became part of the rhythm, a low, soothing background to the mounting tension. Officers exchanged quiet words, plotting scenarios that combined logic, experience, and instinct. The Pacific around them remained patient, waves gentle and reflective, yet carrying potential consequences beneath the surface. Every sailor felt the subtle intimacy of preparation, each breath a measure of both presence and anticipation, and in that intimacy, a soft thread of calm wove through tension, carrying focus forward. The night drew closer, stretching the line between expectation and action. The enemy's presence loomed as an unseen force, a shadow measured through intelligence and intuition. Callaghan and Scott, across the Channel, considered their own preparations, the fragile balance of defense against superior firepower. Reports of the Japanese battleships' approach filtered through signals and observations, each one adding weight to calculations and adjustments. On both sides, sailors and officers moved with quiet deliberation, guided by awareness rather than haste. The ocean carried every decision and ripple with impartial grace, reflecting the sky and the gravity of human action. Waves brushed against hulls, soft but persistent, shaping thought and movement alike. Ships passed in measured arcs, maintaining separation while feeling the subtle pull of strategy and tide. And in this measured anticipation, tension grew without clamoring, a quiet crescendo beneath the darkening horizon. The Solomons held their silence, listening to the slow gathering of power. Every man aboard felt the weight of history pressing gently forward. Hiei and Kirishima advanced with a quiet inevitability, their massive forms cutting through darkness and reflection alike. Sailors adjusted positions, monitored instruments, and readied guns, each action deliberate and unhurried. The decks carried the subtle energy of purpose, the awareness of what could be achieved and what could be lost. The Pacific mirrored their passage, gentle on the surface yet carrying momentum and consequence beneath. Officers observed, calculated and anticipated, their rhythm harmonized with both machinery and intuition. The horizon narrowed, reefs and islands, adding soft contours to a world in quiet motion. Every creak of steel, every subtle vibration became part of the unfolding meditation of preparation. And in that unfolding, awareness deepened, blending calm with the quiet dread of potential devastation. The battleship's firepower was immense, yet the anticipation of risk lent a hypnotic tension to every breath. Guadalcanal awaited, patient and indifferent, as shadow met shadow on the waters. Evening deepened, softening edges while amplifying uncertainty, as both fleets edged closer to the impending encounter. Sailors on deck moved with steady hands, voices measured, their attention tuned to instruments, signals, and instinct. The weight of potential consequences lay in every decision, carried gently yet persistently through the corridors and decks. Officers discussed angles, courses, and coordination, blending calculation with intuition, patience with urgency. The Pacific around them reflected stars and moonlight, a soft surface that concealed both current and intent. Waves carried every ripple of thought and movement forward, smoothing edges, yet retaining memory. The approaching night felt like a tide, lifting tension gently yet inexorably, and in that tide anticipation became rhythm, awareness became meditation, and every heartbeat synchronized with the slow cadence of the ocean. Guadalcanal's fate, fragile yet crucial, rested in the quiet coordination of men, steel, and sea. The horizon promised confrontation, soft but inevitable. As darkness settled fully, the Solomon's waters became a quiet stage for immense power and fragile human presence. Hiei and Kirishima moved as if drawn by destiny. Their firepower immense, their crews calm yet alert. Every sailor, every officer, every man below decks contributed to the hypnotic rhythm of readiness, each breath measured against the weight of what lay ahead. The Pacific remained patient, waves gentle but unyielding, carrying history and memory in their movement. Across the Channel, Allied forces sensed the quiet gathering of force, preparing themselves in measured anticipation, Tension existed without clamoring, growing like a pulse beneath the smooth, reflective surface of the ocean. The night held them in suspension, aware yet indifferent, while currents and tide whispered in soft cadence. And as the first moments of potential engagement drew near, the listener feels the gentle rise of dread and expectation, hypnotic and inexorable. Guadalcanal's story pressed forward, patient, deliberate, and quietly immense. The stage was set for the next chapter, where shadow and steel would finally meet. Night enveloped the waters around Guadalcanal, softening horizons yet concealing the weight of steel moving beneath. Hay advanced with quiet inevitability, her decks humming with engines and the measured steps of sailors attending their stations. Star shells arced through the dark sky, brief blooms of white illuminating decks, rigging, and the swell of the ocean with surreal clarity. Guns shifted into position, their enormous barrels aligned with intent, while officers observed and anticipated with calm precision. The Pacific seemed to hold its breath, reflecting fleeting bursts of light and shadow across its smooth surface. Sailors felt the rhythm of tension in every vibration, every creak, every distant thrum of ordnance. Commands passed softly, deliberate and precise, cutting through the whisper of wind and water. Each moment stretched, elongated by uncertainty and focus, as if time had slowed to match the sway of the ship. And in this slow pulse awareness deepened, blending anticipation, fear and endurance into a hypnotic cadence. The night carried forward, patient and unyielding, as Heia pressed toward her fated encounter. Opposing ships mirrored her movement, their presence a quiet counterpoint to power and vulnerability. Officers adjusted angles and course calculating trajectories with calm precision, their thoughts as steady as the motion of the ocean. Waves brushed hulls softly, an indifferent observer to the preparations of men and steel alike. Star shells flared again, casting fleeting light on decks and ocean, illuminating both anticipation and apprehension. Sailors monitored instruments, guided by training and instinct, moving in quiet rhythm with the pulse of the vessel. Hay's engines thrummed steadily beneath, each vibration a reminder of her strength and fragility alike. The night seemed to bend around them, expanding in darkness yet intimate in sensation. Each flash of light, each distant sound, became a guide through uncertainty and risk. And in this careful attention, the crew found focus, a hypnotic clarity that steadied both mind and hand. Guadalcanal's waters held them in balanced suspension, a calm harbor for tension yet to come. The first salvos rang out with sudden precision, soft bursts that echoed across waves and hulls. Hai responded in kind, her massive guns aligning with practiced instinct, releasing energy in measured pulses. Smoke drifted low over decks, carrying heat and scent across the night, mingling with salt, and the faint tremor of tension. Sailors felt the movement of the ship as an extension of their own awareness. Each action harmonized with the rhythm of the hull and the swell of the sea. Orders were passed quietly, yet with urgency tempered by training, a calm determination beneath the frenzy. Star shells continued to bloom, fleeting illuminations that cast everything in surreal contrast and heightened perception. Even in chaos, there was rhythm, a pulse beneath the sudden bursts, a continuity of presence amid change. Officers measured distance, timing and possibility, adjusting course and fire in a quiet, deliberate dance. And in this dance, awareness became meditation, fear became focus, and the crew became an extension of the vessel itself. The ocean held them gently, patient yet aware, carrying every movement forward. Damage began to take its toll, subtle at first, whispered through vibration and misalignment. Crews worked below decks to stabilize systems, their hands steady, eyes intent, maintaining motion and life aboard. Hayes' armor, formidable yet finite, absorbed stress and strain with resilience. But even steel could not fully resist persistent pressure. Star shells flared, illuminating fleeting glimpses of sky, water, and distant vessels in muted brilliance. Sailors adjusted with instinctual care, correcting course, compensating for vibration, ensuring continuity in function. The night remained patient, indifferent, yet reflective of every small change, every adjustment and response. Officers coordinated quietly, blending calculation and intuition, their rhythm in harmony with the pulse of the ship and the undulating ocean. And in this measured response, tension remained, hypnotic in its constancy, carrying both danger and discipline across the waves. Hay pressed on, resolute, carrying history, duty, and consequence in every vibration and sway. The night deepened, folding the waters and sky around the unfolding struggle. As hours passed, the strain became more evident, the vessel moving with both dignity and faltering persistence. Sailors felt each tremor, every subtle shift in motion, translating it into adjustments and endurance. Star shells illuminated water and deck with fleeting brilliance, painting shadows that stretched across both ship and sea. Officers called soft commands, their voices deliberate, guiding action without haste, sustaining rhythm amid uncertainty. Waves brushed lightly, indifferent yet consistent, echoing the persistence of duty and consequence alike. High responded to challenge with every measure of her strength, yet the limits of power and fragility became undeniable. Crew members adjusted continually, hands and eyes synchronized to the pulse of survival and momentum. And in this synchronization, a hypnotic rhythm carried them forward, steadying heart and mind alike. The night enveloped them fully, yet within darkness, every detail was accentuated, every awareness heightened. The Pacific held all with gentle impartiality, reflecting both endeavor and fragility. Eventually, the toll of engagement became impossible to mitigate, the ship's systems faltering under persistent pressure. Sailors worked to compensate, their movements fluid, precise, and imbued with quiet determination. Officers coordinated with calm focus, assessing stability, charting courses, and maintaining morale. The ocean reflected stars and shell bursts, its surface a mirror to both tension and persistence. His guns fired less steadily, movement slowed yet still guided by discipline and duty. Every man aboard felt the subtle shift, the acknowledgement of limits, the rhythm of survival amidst overwhelming scale. Waves lapped softly against the hull, indifferent yet constant, a hypnotic counterpoint to strain and effort. And in this acknowledgement, the crew's meditation on endurance deepened, focus sharpened, awareness refined. The night stretched onward, long and relentless, carrying both human and steel toward inevitable change. The ocean's rhythm remained steady, patient, and eternal. Finally, Hiei began to succumb, her engines faltering, her motion uncertain, yet her presence remained immense. Sailors braced, adjusting to the subtle sway, performing final stabilizations with quiet resolve. Officers remained calm, guiding movements, observing and maintaining cohesion despite evident fragility. Star shells continued to flare, ephemeral markers of action and consequence, painting deck and sea in fleeting light. The Pacific remained patient, waves brushing with gentle insistence, carrying memory and effort alike. Hiei's decline was gradual, measured, a silent testament to both resilience and limitation. Crews felt the weight of inevitability, yet carried on, each action deliberate, precise, hypnotic in its repetition. And in this continuation, awareness became meditation, loss tempered by focus, tension softened into rhythm. The night held them in suspension, neither yielding nor forgiving, as steel met its limits beneath the stars. Guadalcanal's waters whispered onward, patient and encompassing. In the early hours, Haye slipped beneath the surface, her massive form absorbed into the dark waters she had long traversed. Silence followed, soft yet immense, carrying both relief and reflection across the ocean. Sailors on surrounding vessels exhaled subtly, a quiet acknowledgement of endurance, loss, and the fragility of power. The Pacific held the memory of her presence gently, waves moving as if cradling history itself. Officers recalibrated, plans adjusted, and minds collected focus once more, aware that the night was but one chapter in a longer story. Sailors observed the rhythm of the ocean, breathing in its calm, integrating experience with presence. The night of Haye's fall lingered in thought, a meditation on power, fragility, and perseverance. And as dawn approached, the waters reflected both memory and expectation, carrying all forward gently into the unfolding rhythm of Guadalcanal's continuing saga. The aura of invincibility had been cracked, yet life and mission endured. The waters of Guadalcanal seemed to breathe, carrying with them the echoes of the night's fury while remaining still and reflective beneath the rising sun. Ships floated with quiet dignity, their crews attending to both vessel and self in measured rhythm. Sailors moved with gentle precision, adjusting sails, engines, and instruments, finding reassurance in routine after the strain of the previous engagement. Smoke from distant fires lingered in the air, thin and curling, mingling with the scent of salt and warm sea. Across the channel, opposing fleets mirrored one another, distant silhouettes, resting in patience, each aware of both loss and continuation. Officers reviewed logs, measured damage, and spoke in soft tones, blending calculation with reflection. Waves brushed against hulls, a hypnotic rhythm that seemed to steady thought and calm the body. The air held the weight of quiet contemplation, neither celebratory nor despairing, merely attentive, and in this attentiveness the rhythm of endurance became palpable, a subtle undercurrent beneath the stillness. The ocean held all in a gentle pause, a cradle of reflection and preparation. Below decks, engineers tended machinery with methodical care, their hands moving with habitual precision, a meditation on continuity and presence. Instruments hummed steadily, engines vibrated softly, and the subtle movements of the ship echoed a quiet life sustained. Sailors rested where they could, leaning against steel or rail, eyes closed or staring at patterns in the water. Conversation passed in hushed tones, reflections shared softly, a human counterpoint to the patient pulse of the ocean. The sky above began to stretch in pale gold and lavender, its calm presence echoing the stillness below. Reports of the night's engagement were reviewed and recorded, each fact integrated gently into memory and planning. The ocean's surface rippled with consistency, indifferent yet somehow reflective, carrying the rhythm of presence forward. And in this reflection, men absorbed both relief and awareness, their minds tracing patterns of cause and consequence in soft loops. Time seemed elongated, stretched by stillness, allowing thought to drift slowly, like clouds over the horizon. The day pressed onward gently, a quiet bridge between conflict and preparation. On deck, sailors engaged in small rituals, routines that grounded them amid uncertainty and fatigue. Lines were coiled, equipment polished, and small repairs tended with careful attention. The sun glimmered on metal and water alike, casting patterns that shifted gently with wind and swell. Officers walked with measured steps, observing and guiding, their presence steadying the rhythm of the ship. Waves brushed softly, a constant pulse beneath the ship, echoing patience and persistence. Sailors shared quiet smiles, small gestures that reinforced connection and endurance. Each moment became a thread in the fabric of continuity, a hypnotic repetition that anchored attention and spirit. Across the channel, similar motions unfolded, mirrored in soft, distant harmony. And in this soft harmony, the world seemed to pause, suspended in the delicate balance between history and anticipation. The ocean carried the moment forward, calm, reflective, and endless. Messages traveled slowly, transmitted through signal, radio, and word, each one a gentle echo across distance and duty. Officers coordinated quietly, discussing movement, repairs, and future plans, mindful of both fragility and opportunity. Sailors absorbed these communications with focus, their minds aligning with the rhythm of action and observation. The sea reflected each signal in its subtle movements, waves carrying whispers of coordination across the expanse. Sunlight softened the horizon, casting everything in gentle illumination that encouraged reflection and measured thought. Crews paused between tasks, allowing the mind to drift over the events of night, absorbing both memory and learning. The ocean's surface remained hypnotic, moving slowly with currents and wind, steady and impartial. And in this hypnotic movement, both attention and calm deepened, a soft meditation for sailors and listener alike. Guadalcanal itself seemed to rest, the jungle and shorelines bathed in soft gold, patient in its endurance. The day continued in quiet cadence, carrying all forward in measured steps. Evening approached gradually, softening the brightness into gentle pastels, shadows stretching across the water in quiet elongation. Sailors paused to observe subtle changes in tide and wind, their awareness heightened by stillness rather than urgency. Officers reviewed notes, tracing sequences of action, decisions, and consequence with calm precision. The ocean mirrored the day's slow passage, waves moving steadily yet unpredictably, a hypnotic balance of order and mystery. Crews found small moments of reflection, thoughts wandering across distance, loss, and endurance. Interwoven with presence and care, the rhythm of human activity slowed, harmonizing with the pulse of the sea and the stretching shadows of evening. Messages passed softly, coordination continued, yet the pace felt deliberate, unhurried, and calm. And in this deliberate rhythm, men absorbed the quiet significance of time, allowing memory and preparation to coexist gently. Guadalcanal's waters held both past and present, patient, impartial, yet filled with quiet meaning. The night waited silently, a gentle threshold before tension would rise again. Night deepened, and the sky became a smooth expanse of soft blues and distant stars, reflective of the pause on the waters below. Sailors moved quietly, their silhouettes gentle against the darkened horizon, attuned to the rhythm of wind, waves, and vessel. Conversations were whispered, reflections shared, hands tended to equipment with measured care, and small rituals continued, grounding presence in repetition. Officers observed quietly, guiding and noting, their calm an anchor for those around them. The ocean's gentle swell carried all a hypnotic pulse that encouraged attention, patience, and endurance. Crews adjusted sails, engines, and alignment with subtle precision, attuned to currents and unseen movements beneath the surface. And in this hypnotic attention, the mind and body of sailors harmonized with ship and sea, finding clarity in calm, Guadalcanal's night embraced the waters, holding memory, tension, and patience in gentle suspension. The rhythm of anticipation softened, allowing reflection to settle like sediment across the minds of men. The ocean cradled all forward, still and infinite, as quiet stretched between storms. Amid the calm, individual reflections surfaced, fleeting and gentle, carrying personal memory, hope, and quiet contemplation. Sailors thought of family, of comrades, of moments lost and endured, each thread woven softly into the fabric of the night. The air carried the scent of salt, warmth, and faint smoke, subtle reminders of the world beyond stillness. Officers noted the fragility of both human and steel, the delicate balance that underlay every measure of strategy. Waves brushed hulls in soft insistence, rhythmic and hypnotic, echoing both care and caution. The sky deepened into velvet, stars glimmering faintly, as if acknowledging endurance and patience. Conversations became pauses, reflections became meditation, and attention folded inward even as ships moved forward. And in this inward turn, the listener absorbs the weight of preparation, the gentle cadence of calm before the next tide. Guadalcanal's waters seemed to exhale alongside the crews, holding space for both remembrance and anticipation. The night stretched gently, carrying all forward in hypnotic suspension. By the deepest hour, the fleets rested, poised but patient, aware that continuation would arrive with tide and intent. Sailors found stillness where possible, leaning on rails, resting in bunks, or watching reflections ripple across calm water. Officers coordinated quietly, reviewing strategy, noting progress, and integrating lessons without haste. The Pacific held a smooth surface, its gentle swell a constant, soothing rhythm beneath the weight of human thought. The horizon held a soft promise, neither urgent nor threatening, a continuation of time and possibility. Crews shared fleeting smiles and subtle gestures, reinforcing bonds of endurance, trust and quiet camaraderie. And in this rhythm of calm, the hypnotic pulse of water, wind and presence carried thought forward, steadying mind and body alike. Guadalcanal rested in shadow, the island and sea intertwined in patient reflection. The night preserved both memory and preparation, a quiet bridge between storms. The world exhaled softly, awaiting the next movement in the unfolding story. Twilight settled over the waters surrounding Guadalcanal, softening the horizon into muted shades of violet and gold, while the vast ocean reflected this quiet transformation. Kirishima moved with silent determination, her massive hull cutting through gentle swells as if sensing the duel to come. Sailors on deck performed familiar routines, adjusting instruments, scanning the horizon, and preparing guns with quiet deliberation. The air carried the faint hum of engines mingling with salt and the subtle scent of spent fuel, a soft reminder of purpose and presence. Across the channel, Washington moved with equally measured intent, radar screens flickering with information and anticipation. Officers traced courses with calm precision, aware that every decision would ripple across distance, steel, and human focus alike. The Pacific held them in gentle suspension, waves brushing hulls, carrying rhythm and patience beneath the rising tension. Every breath aboard both ships seemed synchronized with the pulse of water and wind, a hypnotic awareness of fragility and power. And in this awareness, the quiet magnitude of what was to come settled over all, expansive yet intimate. Twilight stretched onward, a soft bridge into conflict yet unseen. The first glimmers of radar contacts illuminated the night, subtle blips translating into strategy and caution. Officers whispered coordinates, their voices deliberate, blending calculation, and instinct in the rhythm of command. Sailors adjusted to each update, moving with practiced calm, aware that observation and reaction were as vital as firepower itself. The Pacific carried both presence and expectation, its surface smooth yet charged with invisible momentum. Kirishima advanced every ton of steel attuned to the sea, engines vibrating gently beneath decks, an extension of human purpose and machine endurance. Waves brushed against the hull, soft and insistent, harmonizing with the heartbeat of the ship and the crew aboard. Crew members noted shifts in wind, tide, and light, translating subtle patterns into mental maps of risk and opportunity. And in this quiet observation, awareness deepened, each sailor part of a larger meditation of presence and preparation. The horizon glimmered with fading light, as if holding its breath for what was about to unfold. The rhythm of expectation carried the moment forward, soft yet insistent. The first salvos came with suddenness, brief flashes of power that illuminated decks and water in fleeting brilliance. Sailors felt the tremor of energy beneath their feet, translating each pulse into practiced adjustment and awareness. Officers directed movements with calm authority, blending observation, calculation, and instinct into a seamless rhythm. Washington responded with measured precision, every gun aligned, every angle adjusted in hypnotic coordination. Waves carried sound and echo across distance, muffled yet persistent, integrating the movement of both vessel and ocean. Star shells arced briefly, illuminating fleeting reflections of steel and water, enhancing perception without urgency. Crew members noted each subtle shift in posture, angle, or vibration, their awareness heightened by necessity and presence. And in this heightened state, tension became a quiet pulse, hypnotic and steady beneath the brief flares of action. The ocean remained patient, waves brushing hulls gently, a steady counterpoint to sudden bursts of energy. Twilight deepened, softening contrast while carrying the weight of consequence forward. Kirishima's massive frame responded to engagement with resilience, every movement a study in precision and endurance. Sailors moved as extensions of the ship, hands and eyes synchronized to engines, instruments, and the subtle rhythm of the Pacific. Officers recalibrated courses and firepower with gentle focus, maintaining flow and cohesion under pressure. Waves lapped against the hull, whispering continuity and persistence, even as tension pulsed through steel and human thought. Every brief illumination of star shells highlighted reflections in water, a moment of clarity within ongoing anticipation. Crew members shared subtle gestures, quiet reinforcement of cohesion and trust amidst extraordinary responsibility. And in this interplay of observation, calculation, and presence, time seemed to stretch, each heartbeat a meditation on vigilance and endurance. Twilight gave way slowly to night, softening the edges of anticipation while deepening focus. The duel carried a sense of intimacy, as if ship and sailor, radar and wave, existed in suspended rhythm. The ocean held all forward, patient and hypnotic, beneath shadow and light. The clash continued, each salvo a note in a slow, intense symphony of steel and presence. Sailors tracked responses, adjusting, learning, moving in measured rhythm, with both vessel and circumstance. Officers coordinated quietly, voices low but authoritative, blending logic and intuition into a continuous flow of action. The Pacific reflected bursts of light in gentle ripples, softening impact while enhancing awareness. Crew members noted subtle vibration, the sway of deck and hull, the pulse of engines, integrating it into conscious response. Each flash of light became a marker, a guide, a rhythm to synchronize thought and motion, and in this measured synchronization, Sailors achieved calm within chaos, focus within pressure, presence within magnitude. The duel remained intimate despite its titanic scale, every action precise, deliberate, and connected. Twilight deepened further into night, soft yet charged with anticipation, carrying consequence forward with gentle insistence. The Pacific held them all, unhurried and eternal, beneath shadow and reflection. Gradually Kirishima began to show the strain of engagement, her movements deliberate yet laboring under continuous pressure. Sailors adapted instinctively, adjusting operations, stabilizing systems, sustaining momentum with quiet concentration. Officers recalculated, monitoring angles, fire, and positioning, blending observation with intuition and experience. The ocean remained hypnotic, waves brushing against the hull, steady and impartial, echoing rhythm beneath human endeavor. Starshells continued to arc briefly, providing fleeting clarity and insight into the vast reflective canvas of sea and sky. Crew members relied on one another in subtle ways, gestures and glances reinforcing coordination and presence. And in this careful coordination, the hypnotic rhythm of anticipation persisted, tension carried without harshness, pressure absorbed without panic. Twilight bled slowly into night, darkening waters while preserving the delicate pulse of awareness. The duel continued, immense yet measured, steel and mind entwined across the Pacific. Guadalcanal's waters cradled both force and fragility, carrying forward every subtle motion. As the engagement neared its conclusion, precision and endurance defined every act aboard both ships. Sailors moved with deliberate calm, anticipating response, sustaining rhythm, attending to engines, guns, and hull alike. Officers maintained soft command, balancing risk with calculation, every instruction measured and considered. The Pacific reflected starlight and the last traces of twilight, a hypnotic mirror of presence and consequence. Crew members noted subtle tremors, each one guiding adjustment and focus, maintaining continuity amidst pressure. Star shells flared briefly, illuminating fleeting moments of coordination, reflection, and measured action. And in this hypnotic pulse, awareness became meditation, tension became rhythm, and the duel reached quiet inevitability. Kirishima's moment of vulnerability approached steel and human endurance converging in subtle, profound resonance. The night deepened, holding all in patient observation, waves carrying thought, effort, and reflection alike. Guadalcanal waited, indifferent yet intimately connected, as history continued its slow hypnotic progression. Finally the duel resolved, the immense tension giving way to a profound stillness. A pause after the intimate display of power and precision. Sailors exhaled subtly, attention softening, movements easing into routine, yet awareness remained attuned to possibility. Officers recorded, reflected, and planned, integrating lessons and endurance into soft, measured understanding. The Pacific carried both the calm and memory of engagement, waves moving gently as if cradling history itself. Twilight faded fully into night, a seamless transition from anticipation to reflection, shadow to quiet illumination. Crew members shared quiet acknowledgements, subtle recognition of effort, courage, and precision, without haste or celebration. And in this acknowledgement, the hypnotic rhythm of sea and vessel continued, each movement soft, deliberate, and continuous. The duel had ended, yet the ocean preserved its memory gently, indefinitely, for all who bore witness. Guadalcanal's waters whispered forward, holding space for reflection, patience, and the next unfolding story. The night remained patient, calm, and expansive, carrying all forward gently into anticipation. Twilight deepened into night, Yet the waters around Guadalcanal seemed charged with quiet anticipation, as if the ocean itself understood the weight of destiny approaching. Washington moved with deliberate grace, her massive hull cutting through waves, engines vibrating softly beneath the feet of focused sailors. Officers reviewed charts and radar, interpreting faint blips that hinted at opportunity and peril alike. Crew members moved with steady precision, adjusting instruments and aligning guns with calm awareness, each action measured against potential consequence. The Pacific reflected bursts of light and shadow, waves carrying both anticipation and the hypnotic rhythm of distance traveled. Sailors felt the pulse of the ship as an extension of thought, a shared awareness of responsibility and history. Star shells arced briefly above, illuminating fleeting glimpses of water, rigging, and steel, soft yet revealing. And in this illumination, the enormity of what was about to unfold pressed gently upon minds and senses alike. The night held them in suspended tension, patient yet insistent. Guadalcanal's waters mirrored the quiet intensity, carrying forward both presence and expectation. As Admiral Lee guided his flagship closer, subtle adjustments carried immense consequence. Every movement calibrated with experience and intuition, sailors observed and responded, hands steady, eyes attuned, motion synchronized with the rhythm of engines and hull. Radar screens flickered with ghostly echoes of distant vessels, guiding decisions and anticipation in hypnotic focus. Washington's guns, immense and precise, shifted into position, the crew's awareness flowing seamlessly into the mechanisms of steel and power. The Pacific carried each vibration gently, waves brushing hulls like soft exhalations of the ocean itself. Officers whispered coordinates, calibrating angles and timing with quiet authority, blending instinct, logic, and reflection. Crew members absorbed every nuance, translating subtle tremors into steady, deliberate action, and in this delicate balance, tension remained, hypnotic and controlled, rising without abruptness, like wind gathering beneath an unseen sail. Twilight fully surrendered to night, shadows folding around both ships, the ocean reflecting the magnitude of anticipation. The moment held, vast yet intimate, every breath synchronized with history unfolding on water. Salvos began with sudden elegance, immense yet deliberate, their energy carrying across distance, while the ocean absorbed each pulse. Sailors felt tremors through the deck, translating vibration into awareness, adjustment, and quiet rhythm. Officers guided response with steady hands, observing outcomes and recalibrating, blending focus with meditative patience. Waves reflected bursts of light, soft and hypnotic, as the ocean mirrored both magnitude and delicacy. Crew members adjusted sights, repositioned and prepared for subsequent rounds, a calm choreography of precision and endurance. Star shells glimmered above, brief yet illuminating, highlighting reflections in water and steel without urgency. And in this hypnotic sequence, awareness deepened, tension flowed into rhythm, and presence became both action and meditation. Washington moved steadily, each movement deliberate, each salvo a quiet assertion of control. The Pacific embraced both pulse and pause, carrying the energy forward gently. Twilight's memory lingered, softening contrast and deepening reflection, carrying all into the next rhythm of engagement. Kirishima responded, her massive frame enduring, engines vibrating with persistent resilience beneath attentive crews. Sailors aboard maintained steady rhythm, adjusting to subtle shifts, observing patterns, integrating awareness into every action. Officers measured distance, fire, and timing, each decision guided by logic, instinct, and the pulse of human presence. Waves brushed gently against hulls, soft yet insistent, carrying awareness of magnitude, consequence, and fragility. Crew members shared fleeting glances, subtle acknowledgments of coordination, trust, and endurance under pressure. Star shells continued to flare above, soft bursts illuminating the interplay of steel, water, and human focus. And in this quiet interplay, tension rose without clamoring, a hypnotic crescendo beneath shadowed skies. Washington's movement remained deliberate, her immense guns aligned with patience and precision, translating strategy into rhythm. The ocean held both vessels in suspended balance, steady and unyielding, yet accommodating. Twilight's fading memory lingered in reflections on the water, carrying anticipation forward softly. The duel continued, immense yet intimate, each salvo a meditation on scale, endurance, and presence. Sailors adjusted rhythm, translating every subtle tremor into action with hypnotic focus and calm attention. Officers coordinated with low, deliberate voices, blending calculation and intuition into continuous flow. Waves reflected bursts of light and vibration, soft yet insistent, harmonizing with the pulse of human and steel alike. Crew members monitored instruments, realigned and maintained focus, every gesture deliberate and precise. Star shells arced gently, illuminating fleeting glimpses of water, deck, and rigging, brief clarity within ongoing anticipation. And in this gentle illumination, tension remained hypnotic, rising without abruptness, a slow crescendo of awareness. Kirishima endured, her massive form resilient, yet each pulse of response carried weight, measured in motion and consequence. The Pacific maintained its quiet impartiality, waves brushing against hulls with steady persistence. Twilight fully yielded to night, carrying forward reflection, anticipation, and the subtle cadence of destiny. Damage and strain became subtly evident, felt through vibration, movement, and observation, yet resilience persisted in steel and human attention. Sailors adapted instinctively, adjusting systems and positions with calm precision, sustaining momentum and focus. Officers monitored closely, blending calculation with instinct, maintaining cohesion and rhythm throughout the vessel. Waves lapped gently, hypnotic in persistence, echoing presence and endurance beneath all action. Star shells continued their brief arcs, soft illuminations that carried perspective, reflection, and guidance across the expanse of ocean. Crew members responded with steady hands, fluid motion, quiet reassurance, and disciplined awareness. And in this steady response, hypnotic focus deepened, tension folded into rhythm, and observation became meditation. Washington maintained her course, guns aligned with precision, every crew member attuned to presence, action, and consequence. The night held them gently, patient, expansive, yet charged with purpose. The ocean cradled all forward, calm, reflective, and enduring. As Kirishima's condition worsened, her crew maintained focus, attending to engines, systems, and motion with disciplined care. Sailors felt subtle shifts and responded instinctively, translating vibration and sway into action with quiet calm. Officers adjusted orders gently, recalibrating angles, firepower, and navigation without urgency. Maintaining hypnotic rhythm, waves brushed hulls softly, a consistent pulse beneath the intensity of engagement. Star shells flared briefly, illuminating fleeting glimpses of deck, steel, and the endless expanse of water, subtle yet profound. Crew members shared understated acknowledgments, gestures reinforcing trust, endurance, and cohesion. And in this shared awareness, The hypnotic cadence persisted, tension tempered by rhythm, pressure absorbed by observation and discipline. Washington maintained presence and control, translating human attention into steel, firepower, and movement. The night deepened fully, shadows folding over water and vessel alike, a quiet guardian of consequence. Guadalcanal's waters held all gently, carrying history forward with patient, hypnotic insistence. Finally, the immense crescendo resolved, the tension of engagement giving way to a profound quiet, a pause charged with reflection and awareness. Sailors exhaled subtly, movement slowing, focus softening without lapse, presence maintained in calm continuity. Officers recorded outcomes, assessed resilience, and integrated lessons with soft deliberation, blending strategy, observation, and reflection. The Pacific embraced both vessels gently, waves brushing hulls in steady cadence, reflecting both magnitude and subtlety. Star shells faded, twilight's memory lingering faintly, enhancing the rhythm of reflection and attention. Crew members absorbed the quiet significance, gestures and glances, reinforcing understanding and presence. And in this steady hypnotic rhythm, the night carried memory, consequence, and awareness forward, without rush or clamor. Washington's roar had been heard, immense yet measured, reshaping momentum and expectation, with calm inevitability. The ocean held all in gentle suspension, patient and unhurried. As history continued its unfolding, Guadalcanal rested beneath shadow and starlight, carrying both calm and anticipation softly into the next chapter. The night gradually yielded to a muted dawn, the sky soft with pastel streaks that mirrored the gentle ripple of the Pacific around Guadalcanal. Ships drifted slowly, silent and worn, their crews attentive but subdued, each sailor carrying both relief and the quiet weight of memory. Oil-slick waters shimmered with a dark, reflective surface, holding fragments of steel, floating debris, and the subtle pulse of lives endured. Sailors tended to survivors, hands steady and voices calm, weaving reassurance through exhaustion and awareness. Across the channel, distant vessels mirrored the same quiet rhythm, moving deliberately while recording loss and damage with measured care. Waves brushed hulls and floating debris alike, carrying with them a hypnotic pulse, a steady reminder of continuity beneath grief. Officers reviewed the night's events with soft precision, noting both accomplishment and cost, each record a meditation on human endurance. And in this reflection, a shared understanding emerged, a quiet acknowledgement of courage and fragility entwined. The sea held all gently, a patient witness to the lives and steel it carried. Guadalcanal rested beneath the muted sun, calm and absorbing, preparing for the hours yet to come. Survivors clung to floating wreckage, bodies swaying with gentle motion, faces streaked with exhaustion, yet attentive to presence and warmth. Sailors offered blankets, water, and soft words, each gesture a delicate thread of reassurance and continuity. Waves carried both comfort and reminder, brushing quietly against bodies and steel alike. The ocean seemed to absorb grief, reflecting it in soft motion, gentle and endless. Officers moved with deliberate calm, coordinating rescue and care with precision, blending duty and compassion into a measured rhythm. Crew members observed one another, subtle glances, reinforcing shared endurance and trust, a quiet acknowledgement of survival and loss. And in this shared rhythm, attention softened, tension released, awareness maintained in the gentle cadence of movement. The sun rose higher, warming decks and water alike, golden light reflecting gently across waves and floating fragments. Guadalcanal's waters bore witness, patient, impartial, yet intimately connected to human struggle. The morning carried forward, soft, reflective, and expansive, a lull in the ongoing story. The Pacific itself seemed subdued, its surface smooth yet persistent, carrying the echoes of night and the subtle pulse of recovery. Sailors noted the delicate shifts of wind and tide, adjusting sails and instruments with calm precision. The smell of salt and faint smoke lingered, reminders of night's intensity, integrated gently into sensory awareness. Officers documented survivors and damage, voices low and deliberate, a rhythm of attention and observation. Crew members moved carefully, tending to minor repairs, distributing food, and offering quiet reassurance to those afloat. And in these measured motions, hypnotic attention carried both duty and reflection forward, maintaining presence without haste. Waves brushed floating wreckage, rocking it gently, a hypnotic counterpoint to the steady movement of human care. The sea reflected the soft pastels of dawn, blending calm, reflection, and endurance into a single continuum. Guadalcanal seemed to exhale, the island and waters absorbing grief and sustaining presence simultaneously. The morning held them gently, carrying both sorrow and resilience forward. Debris floated with quiet inevitability, steel and wood tracing gentle arcs in rhythm with the tide. Sailors observed with patience, noting positions and patterns, integrating this into both awareness and planning. Officers coordinated quietly, recording, mapping, and calculating for ongoing care and recovery. Crew members offered subtle gestures of reassurance, sharing water, blankets, or simple words of calm encouragement. And in this gentle interchange, the hypnotic rhythm persisted, tension absorbed by focus, grief softened by continuity, waves brushed hulls and debris alike, steady and unyielding, reflecting both magnitude and subtlety. The Pacific held them in patient suspension, neither urgent nor indifferent, a cradle for endurance and reflection. Light shifted slowly, illuminating fragments of the night's intensity with soft clarity, revealing patterns of survival, resilience, and fragility. Guadalcanal's waters remained hypnotic, steady in presence, carrying all forward through quiet observation. The morning expanded, calm and contemplative, preparing hearts and minds for continuity. Rescue boats moved with measured purpose, slipping through reflective waves, their crews attentive to both debris and survivors. Sailors extended hands, offered warmth, and coordinated gently, integrating care into hypnotic rhythm. Officers ensured safe transit, guiding boats with calm authority, blending observation and presence into continuous flow. The ocean responded softly, waves brushing boats, hulls and floating remnants, a steady pulse beneath human motion. Crew members shared subtle recognition, quiet acknowledgments of endurance and trust exchanged in gestures and glance. And in this continuous flow, hypnotic cadence absorbed grief into rhythm, reflection into attentive action. The sky stretched higher, soft blue and gold mingling, a gentle balm on fatigue and memory. Guadalcanal's waters cradled both movement and pause, attentive yet patient, indifferent yet intimate. Survivors drifted slowly, soothed by gentle motion, carried forward on the ocean's pulse. The morning persisted, calm and continuous, a bridge between loss and preparation. Across channels and inlets, distant ships mirrored the same gentle attentiveness, silent witnesses to the cost of engagement. Sailors observed with quiet focus, noting positions, patterns, and the subtle pulse of tides and wind. Officers recorded each detail, blending reflection with planning, maintaining continuity without urgency. Crew members tended to floating debris, survivors, and small repairs, integrating presence with action in hypnotic rhythm. And in this soft integration, grief became less sharp, absorbed into measured care and shared awareness. Waves brushed hulls, oil-slick surfaces, and floating remnants, a steady, hypnotic pulse beneath human effort. The Pacific reflected muted light, water and sky blending in calm meditation. Guadalcanal seemed to breathe with the tide, carrying loss, endurance, and quiet resilience in soft continuity. Sailors exhaled subtly, attention folding into awareness and presence, tension easing into rhythm. The morning remained patient, expansive and hypnotic, holding all gently in its flow. The sun rose fully, warming decks, water and bodies, with subtle insistence, a gentle reassurance against fatigue and grief. Sailors moved with deliberate calm, attending to immediate needs, while sustaining awareness of surrounding waters. Officers coordinated with low voices, decisions measured, presence maintained, observation continuous. Crew members shared fleeting smiles and soft gestures, reinforcing trust, endurance, and the quiet rhythm of continuity. And in this shared rhythm, hypnotic attention deepened, integrating reflection, care, and preparation into seamless flow. Waves brushed hulls and floating remnants, steady and impartial, echoing the hypnotic cadence of movement and presence. The Pacific held them in patient suspension, both cradle and mirror for endurance and quiet sorrow. Guadalcanal's waters carried forward the memory of loss, human care, and resilience, a soft continuum in both time and space. Survivors drifted gently, boats and crews attending in deliberate rhythm, the ocean sustaining and cradling alike. The morning remained vast, calm, and hypnotic, holding grief with gentle insistence. Evening approached with subtle light, soft golds deepening into muted blues. The day's warmth lingering across water and deck. Sailors continued their measured work, attending to survivors, repairing, and observing with calm attentiveness. Officers guided with soft authority, maintaining flow and rhythm without urgency, blending observation with reflection. Crew members exchanged subtle gestures of reassurance and connection, reinforcing trust and cohesion. And in this persistent rhythm, grief, memory, and human endurance folded together, hypnotic and steady. Waves brushed gently against hulls and floating debris, a constant soothing pulse beneath every movement. The Pacific seemed to exhale alongside the crews, holding all in gentle suspension. Patient yet intimately aware, Guadalcanal rested beneath twilight and soft wind, its waters absorbing sorrow, carrying presence and sustaining reflection. Sailors drifted in thought and motion, the hypnotic rhythm of water and care intertwining with human endurance. The ocean held all forward gently, calm, reflective, and eternal, as the day faded toward night. The morning sun spread softly over Guadalcanal, bathing Henderson Field in gentle light that revealed both scars and resilience. Marines moved steadily along airstrips and trenches, their steps deliberate, hands busy with maintenance and preparation. The hum of engines and distant bird calls mixed with quiet voices, creating a rhythm both practical and soothing. Aircraft rested on the tarmac, wings catching the soft glint of sunlight, ready yet calm, a symbol of endurance against the tide of conflict. Officers walked the lines with measured steps, observing and guiding with quiet authority, ensuring readiness without urgency. Sailors and soldiers shared fleeting smiles and nods, subtle affirmations of trust and cohesion, the human rhythm intertwining with metal and earth. The ocean beyond shimmered faintly, waves brushing distant shores with hypnotic patience, carrying the calm forward. Every breath seemed synchronized with the slow, steady heartbeat of the airfield, presence and purpose blending seamlessly. And in this moment, the island exhaled with both relief and quiet vigilance, carrying the sense of fragile hope forward. Henderson Field held resilient and expansive, a soft anchor in the vast Pacific. The Japanese air threat faltered. Reconnaissance flights, tracing cautious arcs across the horizon, hesitant against prepared defenses. Marines observed with deliberate calm, noting movements while maintaining the hypnotic rhythm of repair, patrol, and vigilance. Artillery positions adjusted slowly, each gun sighted and cared for, blending focus with reflection. Sailors watched distant waves and weather, ensuring supply lines remained intact, integrating presence with preparation. And in this quiet observation, tension remained steady but softened, absorbed into rhythm and awareness, rather than sharp urgency. Birds called softly overhead, their movement a gentle counterpoint to the human pulse below, reminding all of continuity beyond steel and strategy. Officers noted subtle shifts in wind and light, calibrating plans with quiet deliberation, each decision measured and unhurried. Crew members shared minor tasks and assistance, small gestures reinforcing trust, cohesion, and the hypnotic continuity of effort. The airfield thrived in gentle activity, every motion deliberate, every presence attentive, and Guadalcanal seemed to breathe alongside its defenders, patient, calm, and sustaining. Supplies moved steadily along rough tracks and cleared paths, carried with quiet diligence, each crate a symbol of continuity. Marines lifted and organized their movements precise, rhythmic, and unhurried, blending human effort with the pulse of duty. Officers coordinated delivery and allocation, voices low and deliberate, ensuring smooth flow without rush or error. Sailors monitored distant waters, aware of subtle shifts in tide and wind, maintaining vigilant calm over transport and approach. And in this steady flow, rhythm absorbed tension, action became meditation, and presence merged with endurance. The sun rose higher, soft light glinting off metal, canvas, and skin, illuminating the quiet orchestration of life and war intertwined. Marines dug, repaired, and reinforced, each motion deliberate, carrying both necessity and reflection. Crew members worked alongside them when possible, hands and attention synchronized in a gentle shared cadence. Waves brushed distant shores, whispering continuity and patience, echoing the steady flow of human effort. Henderson Field expanded quietly into the morning, a testament to resilience, rhythm, and gentle endurance. Aircraft engines hummed softly as planes prepared for patrol, wings catching the sunlight, like still water reflecting distant clouds. Pilots moved calmly along tarmacs, checking instruments and adjusting controls, their rhythm deliberate and steady. Officers coordinated flight schedules, integrating observation, anticipation, and care into a continuous pulse of readiness. Sailors assisted with minor maintenance and supplies, their movements synchronized with the hypnotic rhythm of air and land, and in this flow, vigilance became meditation, tension absorbed into measured action, presence maintained with quiet focus. The Pacific beyond glimmered, waves brushing distant coves in steady, patient rhythm. Marines patrolled edges of the airfield, rifles slung yet movement deliberate, reflective and hypnotic. Crew members offered water and guidance, subtle gestures reinforcing cohesion and endurance. Light shifted softly, illuminating the expanse of the airfield and its surroundings. Warm, expansive, and calm, Henderson Field remained alive, steady and present, carrying forward the quiet heartbeat of Guadalcanal. Even as repairs continued, Marines paused occasionally, scanning horizons and listening to the hypnotic rhythm of waves and wind. Sailors observed distant inlets, noting subtle changes, maintaining calm awareness without urgency. Officers recorded observations, balanced with preparation, blending thought, calculation, and reflection. Crew members carried small tasks with attention and care, movements deliberate and continuous, maintaining the rhythm of support. And in this attention, the hypnotic pulse of endurance carried both tension and hope into soft equilibrium. The sun glinted off metal and earth, a gentle reminder of permanence and presence despite uncertainty. Birds, insects, and distant waves contributed a natural cadence, integrating with human activity in subtle, continuous harmony. Marines checked ammunition, strengthened positions, and maintained the hypnotic flow of preparedness without haste. Crew members exchanged subtle acknowledgments, gestures of reassurance and trust, reinforcing shared rhythm. Henderson Field persisted, resilient, calm, and alive, a quiet anchor for both human and machine. The distant roar of engines on patrol blended with the soft brush of waves, creating a layered, hypnotic soundtrack to human endurance. Sailors adjusted equipment with gentle rhythm, maintaining awareness of both ocean and island activity. Officers guided movements, blending experience, observation, and intuition into measured, calming authority. Crew members shared tasks, their quiet coordination reinforcing the hypnotic cadence of presence, action, and reflection. And in this seamless flow, tension softened, attention sharpened, and awareness became continuous meditation. Marines rested briefly between rotations, bodies moving with careful awareness, minds absorbing rhythm and endurance. Waves brushed shores and hulls alike, a gentle, steady pulse beneath every act. Light shifted toward afternoon, golden and soft, illuminating plains, earth and steel with quiet warmth. Crew and Marines maintained synchronization in movement and focus, a delicate balance of preparation and presence. Henderson Field held expansive, resilient, and patient, a hypnotic heart of Guadalcanal's morning. Repair and maintenance flowed in quiet cycles, each action deliberate, precise, and attentive to both human and mechanical rhythm. Sailors cleaned, inspected, and lubricated equipment, every gesture integrating observation, care, and subtle meditation. Officers guided with low voices, blending calculation, attention, and presence into seamless continuity. Crew members assisted, movement synchronized with human and machine, tension absorbed into rhythmic flow, and in this steady sequence calm prevailed, reflection deepened, and presence became expansive, hypnotic, and sustaining. The Pacific stretched beyond the airfield, waves reflecting light and wind in slow, gentle arcs. Marines patrolled and observed, maintaining awareness and continuity without urgency, integrating vigilance into the hypnotic pulse of daily life. Crew exchanged quiet acknowledgments, gestures of reassurance, and shared attention, reinforcing cohesion and endurance. Light softened as day progressed, illuminating every action with gentle clarity. Henderson Field thrived quietly, resilient, expansive, and alive, carrying Guadalcanal's heartbeat forward. Evening approached, the sun mellowing into soft shades of gold and rose, casting long shadows across the tarmac and trenches. Marines checked positions one final time, movements deliberate, hands steady, presence calm. Sailors tended remaining supplies, adjusting and recording with gentle rhythm, each action deliberate and unhurried. Officers reflected on the day's flow, noting endurance, small victories, and the hypnotic rhythm that had sustained all. Crew members shared minor words of reassurance and gratitude, subtle gestures reinforcing cohesion and quiet morale. And in this shared reflection, Hypnotic rhythm carried both relief and readiness forward, maintaining continuity and focus. Waves brushed distant shores, soft and persistent, echoing the pulse of human effort and observation. Light faded gently, leaving warmth, calm, and expansive awareness behind. A seamless bridge to night. Henderson Field held enduring alive and patient, a hypnotic center of Guadalcanal's fragile hope. The day exhaled softly, carrying calm and quiet vigilance into the approaching night. Night settled over the Solomon Islands, a deep, velvety darkness stretching across water and sky, carrying a quiet weight of expectation. Japanese destroyers slipped through the shadows, their engines a low hum against the gentle rhythm of the waves. Sailors moved with careful purpose, aware that each journey held both necessity and grave risk. The ocean reflected a muted silver from starlight, waves brushing against hulls with hypnotic persistence. Officers whispered orders, their voices soft yet precise, guiding movements with steady calm. Each crate carried essential supplies, the fragile lifeline for soldiers, holding Henderson Field against unyielding pressure. And in this quiet tension, the pulse of anticipation rose slowly, measured by both water and breath. Navigation lights glimmered faintly, casting gentle reflections across rippling surfaces. Crew members adjusted instruments with deliberate care, integrating observation into the hypnotic rhythm of motion. The Pacific held them patient and unwavering, carrying both hope and apprehension forward. Destroyers hugged the narrow channels, their silhouettes moving with steady purpose against the faint outline of distant islands. Sailors monitored waves and wind, adjusting course and speed with careful attention. Officers measured each subtle shift, anticipating both oceanic currents and potential enemy presence. The cargo below decks shifted gently with each roll of the ship, a quiet reminder of human effort and fragile lives intertwined. And in this motion, awareness deepened, tension rising without abruptness, hypnotic and continuous. Waves brushed against steel, their rhythmic pulse echoing through decks and minds alike. The night sky arced overhead, stars like distant watchful eyes, offering soft illumination for disciplined action. Crew members shared quiet acknowledgements, subtle gestures of trust and endurance, passing along each deck. Each mile carried both anticipation and reflection, a hypnotic cadence that sustained presence and vigilance. The ocean, vast and indifferent, cradled them gently yet insistently, moving all forward in quiet rhythm. Occasionally, distant silhouettes of enemy patrols appeared, shadows in the darkness, prompting quiet adjustments of speed and formation. Sailors felt the subtle tremors beneath their feet, translating movement into awareness and calm reaction. Officers coordinated discreetly, blending calculation and instinct in seamless, measured flow. Crew members maintained steady hands, adjusting mechanisms and reinforcing cargo, their rhythm hypnotic and continuous. And in this delicate harmony, tension became meditation, presence integrated with action and reflection. Waves brushed the hulls gently, carrying sound, vibration, and subtle reminders of both risk and continuity. The moon traced arcs above, silvering the sea with a calm glow, echoing human focus and careful motion. Each destroyer pressed forward, the subtle pulse of engines and waves merging into hypnotic rhythm. Sailors inhaled and exhaled slowly, bodies moving in sync with craft and crew, aware yet serene. Guadalcanal lay ahead, the island waiting in quiet anticipation, its distant silhouette a soft anchor for human effort. Losses from prior convoys lingered in memory, shadows quietly folded into each sailor's attention and movement. Officers reminded themselves and others of careful precision. each action deliberate, every decision measured. Crew members shared subtle encouragement, gestures and nods blending with the hypnotic rhythm of sea and ship. Waves brushed against the steel hull, constant yet gentle, a persistent cadence beneath the pulse of human effort. And in this continuity, the ocean absorbed both fear and determination, reflecting them back in subtle motion and muted light. Stars above traced arcs across the sky, their cold radiance soft and unhurried, carrying perspective and patience. Sailors adjusted ropes, engines and instruments with focused calm, translating observation into preparation and meditation. Destroyers pressed forward steadily, engines humming in low, hypnotic resonance, a heartbeat of purpose and endurance. Each mile carried risk, yet momentum, discipline, and rhythm prevailed in quiet equilibrium. The night cradled them, vast and patient, carrying both history and hope forward gently. Occasional distant gunfire, soft yet unmistakable, reminded crews of the precariousness of their task. Yet they persisted with calm determination. Officers measured distance and timing, calculating safe approach with care, blending vigilance with hypnotic focus. Crew members maintained quiet attention, hands steady, minds engaged in rhythm and presence. And in this careful orchestration, tension folded into motion, awareness integrated with endurance, risk balanced by preparation. Waves brushed against hulls, low and persistent, a gentle counterpoint to the human pulse on deck. The stars, faint clouds, and ocean reflected both magnitude and subtlety, creating a hypnotic canvas of navigation and effort. Sailors adjusted their course with deliberate precision, the soft creak of steel and wood punctuating steady breath and measured motion. Each moment carried dual awareness of fragility and purpose, life and supply intertwined across the water. Officers recorded positions and shifts, blending reflection with calculation in continuous gentle rhythm. The Pacific carried all forward, patient, calm, and persistent, sustaining human effort without urgency. The first hints of dawn approached, soft light diffusing through clouds and mist, illuminating waves in muted silver and gold. Sailors moved quietly, adjusting engines and maintaining positions with deliberate calm, each gesture synchronized with the hypnotic pulse of the sea. Officers guided approach to the island, observing subtle changes in current, wind, and horizon. Crew members monitored cargo, ensuring balance and security, their actions steady and rhythmic. And in this morning transition, anticipation and reflection merged, rising without abruptness, gentle yet persistent. The ocean reflected the muted light, waves brushing hulls like soft exhalations, a continuous reminder of continuity beneath tension. Sailors shared quiet nods and words, subtle reinforcements of trust, cohesion, and careful presence. Each destroyer pressed forward, engines humming low, motion measured, discipline maintained. Guadalcanal's outline sharpened softly in the dawn, a distant promise, both goal and anchor. The convoy approached with calm determination, the hypnotic rhythm of sea and human effort carrying them forward. Arrival loomed, ships slowing with gentle precision, mindful of shallow waters and hidden reefs along Guadalcanal's coast. Sailors coordinated movements with quiet attention, observing waves, wind, and tide, as if the ocean itself dictated pace. Officers guided each vessel delicately, ensuring safe approach while maintaining readiness for unforeseen shifts. Crew members adjusted cargo, secured supplies, and reinforced mechanisms, all motion deliberate, calm, and synchronized. And in this continuous flow, tension softened into rhythm, anticipation integrated with observation, action merged with meditation. The Pacific held them tenderly, a vast cradle beneath human effort and purpose. Birds called softly above the surf, a gentle counterpoint to engines and waves, blending natural cadence with human pulse. Sailors inhaled and exhaled in quiet awareness, bodies and minds moving with hypnotic alignment. Light deepened across waves, illuminating reflections of steel and water, calm yet insistent. Guadalcanal waited, patient and quiet, as the last convoy pressed forward in measured, persistent rhythm. As the final destroyers approached landing points, every motion carried both relief and reverence, each sailor aware of the fragile balance achieved. Officers ensured careful coordination, voice low, movements deliberate, presence steady, rhythm hypnotic and continuous. Crew members tended to cargo and decks, adjusting and observing, hands guided by awareness and subtle intuition. And in this convergence, the hypnotic pulse of the sea and human effort merged, tension folding into reflection, anticipation softened into calm endurance. Waves brushed gently, engines hummed low, the Pacific holding all forward with patient insistence. Sailors exchanged quiet gestures, nods and smiles, subtle acknowledgments of shared purpose and collective resilience. Dawn expanded slowly, soft light glimmering across ripples and steel, reflecting continuity and gentle determination. Each vessel moved with rhythm, grace, and measured presence, carrying human endeavor into delicate equilibrium. Guadalcanal's shores awaited, the island cradling hope and supply alike, patient and enduring. The last convoy completed its approach, carried forward by calm, persistent, and hypnotic motion, as day unfolded softly across the Pacific. The night air over the Solomon Islands was thick with quiet tension, a soft hum of anticipation mingling with the gentle pulse of the Pacific. Japanese destroyers raced along familiar channels, their engines whispering against dark waves, carrying precious supplies and fragile hope. Sailors moved with steady focus, aware that each mile held both necessity and profound risk, the ocean beneath them vast and indifferent. Above, American aircraft traced silent paths through clouds and moonlight, their presence a slow, hypnotic pressure that stretched time and attention. The hum of engines blended with the rhythmic lapping of waves, creating a pulse both continuous and deliberate. Officers on both sides measured, calculated, and anticipated, minds attuned to subtle shifts in wind, light, and movement. Crew members below decks tended cargo with careful hands, integrating rhythm and attention into every motion, and in this quiet, suspended space, tension rose like the tide itself, measured, hypnotic, and inevitable. Stars reflected faintly in the water, their distant calm contrasting with the human pulse on deck. The night carried them forward, patient yet insistent, toward a fate written in rhythm and patience. Destroyers hugged narrow channels, engines low and deliberate, the sea carrying them like a slow heartbeat beneath hulls. Sailors listened to the subtle vibrations, each pulse of motion blending awareness, vigilance, and quiet anticipation. Officers adjusted course and formation with soft precision, blending observation and instinct into hypnotic rhythm. Crew members moved with careful attention, maintaining cargo and equipment with deliberate, continuous gestures, and in this focused movement tension became meditation. Risk folded into rhythm, each action infused with both presence and care. The moonlight traced silver arcs across the waves, reflecting both steel and water, both endurance and fragility. Sailors exhaled softly, bodies attuned to craft, crew, and ocean, minds synchronized with hypnotic motion. The Pacific held them, patient yet insistent, carrying every mile, every moment, every breath forward. Each destroyer pressed toward the distant goal, anticipation rising subtly in quiet alignment with wind and tide. Guadalcanal waited, soft and expansive, its presence felt through distance, reflection, and expectation. American aircraft moved with subtle inevitability, wings slicing through night air, engines a soft, steady counterpoint to distant waves. Pilots adjusted altitude and course with calm precision, each movement measured, each breath synchronized with crew and machine. Observers noted shifts in wind, clouds, and light, translating subtle signals into careful anticipation. Crew members below followed instructions, movements deliberate, hand steady, attention unwavering, and in this continuous flow, risk transformed into hypnotic presence. Action became meditation, tension folded gently into rhythm. Stars and moon reflected faintly in rippling waters, silvering each wave with a calm, steady glow. Sailors felt the subtle pressure of observation, an invisible weight that guided every shift, adjustment, and calculation. Destroyers pressed forward, engines steady, cargo intact yet precious, every mile a measured negotiation with the Pacific. Every subtle ripple, every distant glimmer of light became part of the hypnotic cadence of presence, preparation, and endurance. And the night stretched, vast and deliberate, carrying all forward in soft inevitability. Torpedoes and bombs marked distant, muffled signatures across the water, subtle disruptions in rhythm rather than abrupt violence. Sailors responded with calm precision, adjusting engines, course, and attention with measured hands. Officers guided every decision, voices low, gestures deliberate, rhythm uninterrupted by urgency. Crew members maintained cargo, secured hatches, and monitored instruments, integrating observation with hypnotic action. And in this careful choreography, tension persisted but softened, awareness folded into the pulse of presence, human and oceanic alike. The Pacific remained vast, its surface reflective and patient, carrying both steel and intention in gentle continuity. Stars traced quiet arcs across sky and sea, their constant glow a soft meditation on distance and scale. Sailors breathed slowly, movement synchronized with craft, crew, and water. Every action deliberate, every glance reflective. The night deepened, calm yet charged, each motion a thread in the hypnotic weave of endurance. Guadalcanal loomed softly ahead, patient, silent, yet profoundly present, guiding every decision and breath. Supply crates shifted with subtle rolls, reminders of the human stakes entwined with every nautical mile traversed. Sailors adjusted lines and fastenings, hands moving in measured, continuous rhythm, attention absorbed in gentle vigilance, officers coordinated with quiet authority, anticipating currents, light, and horizon in continuous meditation. Crew members responded with seamless presence, every gesture deliberate, every movement calm and focused. And in this sustained flow, tension became rhythm, anticipation folded into reflection, endurance became hypnotic and expansive. Waves brushed hulls with gentle insistence, a constant pulse beneath human observation and labor. Stars reflected across rippling surfaces, echoing the measured cadence of engines, hands, and breath. Sailors exhaled subtly, bodies synchronized with craft and crew, minds attuned to subtle motion, light, and sound. Each mile carried history, fragility, and hope across a hypnotic canvas of water, night, and presence. The Pacific held them forward, patient, vast, and watchful, carrying both risk and expectation gently. Occasionally, distant silhouettes of destroyed or abandoned vessels punctuated the night, reminders of voyages failed, cargo lost, and lives endured. Sailors acknowledged them in quiet reflection, tension folding into awareness, presence maintained without abruptness. Officers guided every movement with deliberate care, balancing anticipation with rhythm and observation. Crew members adjusted, moved, and prepared in seamless coordination, integrating every sense into hypnotic continuity, and in this soft orchestration, the pulse of endurance carried forward, awareness becoming meditation, reflection blending with action, waves brushed hulls and debris alike, their steady rhythm echoing across decks and minds. Stars above maintained gentle arcs, indifferent yet softly framing human effort in context of vast space and time. Sailors exhaled and inhaled in slow, deliberate cadence, bodies, minds, and motion unified in presence. Each mile pressed forward in hypnotic certainty, carrying intention, fragility, and hope through the patient Pacific. Guadalcanal awaited, the horizon a quiet anchor for movement, reflection, and anticipation. Dawn approached slowly, soft light filtering through clouds, transforming shadows into gentle reflective contours across waves. Sailors adjusted course and speed subtly, maintaining alignment with both natural elements and human intent. Officers guided approach, voices low, hands deliberate, maintaining calm presence through measured anticipation. Crew members tended cargo, instruments, and mechanisms, gestures rhythmic, continuous, and deliberate, each movement part of a hypnotic cadence. And in this gradual transition, tension folded into rhythm, expectation merged with reflection, awareness expanded into calm readiness. Waves brushed hulls like soft exhalations, carrying reflection, history, and intent forward. Stars faded softly, replaced by the muted, warm glow of early sun, illuminating sea, steel, and human endurance alike. Sailors breathed in harmony with craft and crew, every motion synchronized with subtle shifts in wind and tide. Each destroyer carried fragility and determination, the hypnotic pulse of engines, water, and attention merging into one continuous flow. Guadalcanal emerged quietly before them, patient, unwavering, and present, a soft anchor in the hypnotic rhythm of the last convoys. By mid-morning, the remnants of the Tokyo Express scattered along distant waters, their movement slowed, disrupted, and partially undone. Sailors reflected on missions completed and lost, the hypnotic rhythm of survival and endurance threading through every thought. Officers coordinated carefully, charting remaining courses, assessing risk, and maintaining calm attention. Crew members adjusted cargo, reinforced decks, and monitored engines with deliberate precision, integrating observation into presence. And in this flowing awareness, tension softened, rhythm absorbed anticipation, and endurance became a quiet meditation. Waves brushed gently, carrying reflection and motion forward, integrating human effort into the hypnotic pulse of sea and sky. The sun climbed, painting water and steel with soft warmth, blending clarity and calm across distance. Sailors exhaled subtly, presence folding into motion, observation merging with attention and reflection. Each destroyer pressed forward with deliberate rhythm, fragile yet persistent, embodying both hope and caution. The Tokyo Express faltered, broken gently but irrevocably, leaving the Pacific to cradle its story, patient, vast, and eternal. The horizon expanded softly, distant islands and waters, holding silent testimony to human effort, endurance, and fragility. Sailors and officers shared quiet recognition, subtle gestures, threading trust, cohesion, and reflection through every movement. Crew members continued rhythmic tasks, maintaining presence, observation, and calm attention as the day unfolded. And in this gentle flow, hypnotic rhythm carried forward both continuity and quiet conclusion. Tension softened, awareness expanded, anticipation integrated with reflection. Waves brushed hulls steadily, engines hummed low, stars replaced by soft sun, the ocean patient yet insistent. Sailors inhaled and exhaled in slow cadence, body and mind, synchronized with crew, craft, and water. The final remnants of the convoy pressed onward, fragile yet resilient, each mile, a measured negotiation with the vast Pacific. Guadalcanal remained, patient, unmoving, yet profoundly present, a quiet anchor in time and space. Human effort, ocean and horizon, merged in continuous hypnotic rhythm, each moment folding into the next. And so the Tokyo Express ended, its story carried forward gently by the patient, vast and enduring sea. Night draped Guadalcanal in a soft, velvet darkness, the island exhaling quietly after weeks of relentless tension. Japanese troops moved with careful stealth, their figures ghosting through shadowed paths, each step deliberate, measured, and almost imperceptible. Ships waited offshore, dark silhouettes against gentle waves, engines whispering like distant lullabies across the calm ocean. Officers directed movements with quiet authority, gestures subtle, ensuring that every soldier and piece of equipment followed rhythm and order. The air smelled faintly of salt, earth, and smoke, a memory of battles that had ebbed and flowed like tides. Soldiers paused briefly at clearing edges, listening to the hypnotic pulse of wind and wave, grounding themselves in careful presence. Each step carried away both fatigue and lingering anticipation, blending endurance with the slow relief of retreat. And as the night deepened, silence spread gently behind them, a soft curtain over what had been. Stars reflected faintly across rippling waters, guiding movement with quiet assurance, patient and unwavering. The island seemed to breathe with them, holding memory, motion, and absence in gentle equilibrium. Marines on Henderson Field observed the gradual retreat, aware of the shadows moving across distant ridges and coves. Their steps were slow, measured, integrating attention and reflection into every gesture, every patrol, every silent watch. Officers whispered coordination, planning coverage and observation while preserving calm vigilance. Sailors on nearby vessels monitored faint movements along the shore, engines low, presence steady, hypnotic in continuity. And in this gentle rhythm, tension ebbed softly, absorbed into awareness, patience, and reflection. Waves brushed the hulls and distant shores with steady cadence, each motion carrying both history and quiet reassurance. Soldiers moved along narrow paths, carrying what they could, leaving behind both material and presence with subtle deliberation. The air was humid, carrying soft scents of earth, water, and smoke. Each inhalation, a meditation on endurance and quiet loss. Silence settled, deepening slowly, stretching across hills, beaches, and distant waters. Guadalcanal exhaled softly, holding space for absence, memory, and slow, persistent life. Boats slipped from hidden coves, hulls cutting through gentle waves with almost imperceptible motion. Sailors adjusted lines and sails with calm, continuous rhythm, blending observation and presence into each gesture. Officers coordinated departures with soft, deliberate commands, ensuring alignment and safety without haste or abruptness. Crew members moved silently, securing equipment and attending to fragile cargo, their motion precise yet hypnotically calm. And in this subtle orchestration, withdrawal became a quiet meditation, tension absorbed into rhythm, movement infused with reflection. The moonlight cast muted arcs across water and hulls, illuminating edges with gentle clarity, soft and forgiving. Soldiers paused at embankments to observe surroundings, inhaling the night air with careful, measured attention. Waves brushed against steel with gentle insistence, echoing the slow pulse of human endurance and quiet patience. Each vessel pressed onward with deliberate motion, carrying bodies, history, and purpose in hypnotic cadence. Guadalcanal remained silent, expansive, holding both presence and absence in patient equilibrium. Along ridges and forested paths, remaining troops vanished into shadows, their footsteps merging with wind, leaves, and distant calls of nocturnal birds. Officers maintained quiet control, ensuring units moved without error, their presence guiding without intrusion. Soldiers adjusted packs and weapons with gentle care, maintaining attention, rhythm, and readiness for any subtle shifts in the night. And in this slow, continuous flow, tension softened into endurance, presence became meditation, and motion blended with calm awareness. Waves brushed distant shores and vessels alike, a persistent, gentle pulse beneath human observation. Stars above traced quiet arcs across the sky, indifferent yet softly framing human effort within vast space and time. Soldiers inhaled and exhaled, bodies moving with hypnotic alignment, minds integrating awareness, reflection, and subtle anticipation. Boats swayed gently, engines humming low, each mile forward carrying both care and fatigue in quiet continuity. The night deepened, carrying retreating figures with calm, patient insistence. Guadalcanal exhaled again, holding shadows, silence, and memory in delicate, enduring balance. Occasionally, faint glimmers of lanterns or signals mark distant movement, subtle rhythms in the otherwise still darkness. Sailors and soldiers maintained awareness, each gesture deliberate, hands steady, eyes tracing soft reflections on water and land. Officers whispered coordination, integrating observation and subtle guidance, maintaining hypnotic flow through measured, continuous attention. Crew members adjusted lines and gear with careful hands, movements deliberate yet seamless, blending into the quiet cadence of retreat. And in this gentle continuity, tension became rhythm, anticipation folded into reflection, every motion part of a meditative procession. Waves brushed steadily, soft and consistent, carrying sound, memory, and presence across silent waters. Stars flickered faintly in the night, reflections mirrored in rippling currents, a hypnotic reminder of scale and patience. Soldiers paused briefly to inhale, exhale, and observe, bodies synchronized with rhythm and movement. Each step, each wave, each breath carried fragility, endurance, and continuity across the patient night. Guadalcanal cradled them softly, holding absence, motion, and memory in calm equilibrium. As dawn hinted at distant horizons, boats and men moved like whispers across dim waters, presence softened by anticipation of light. Sailors adjusted sails and engines with calm rhythm, blending vigilance and reflection in each motion. Officers guided departures with subtle gestures, presence precise, unhurried, hypnotically continuous. Crew members tended cargo, secured lines, and monitored equipment, integrating action, observation, and calm awareness. And in this seamless flow, withdrawal became meditation. Anticipation softened into rhythm, presence merged with quiet endurance. The Pacific mirrored faint light, waves brushing hulls gently, carrying both fragility and intention forward. Soldiers inhaled softly, adjusted movements, and remained attuned to every subtle shift in environment and water. The night stretched toward dawn, patient, slow, and expansive, framing human motion with quiet elegance. Each mile carried effort, presence, and memory across the soft, enduring sea. Guadalcanal exhaled with gentle patience, shadows yielding to the muted warmth of approaching light. By mid-morning, most ships and soldiers had faded from immediate view, the coast returning to quiet rhythm and observation. Sailors and marines maintained careful presence, scanning for remnants yet holding space for reflection and patience. Officers coordinated final departures, gestures subtle, voice low, presence deliberate and continuous. Crew members maintained vigilance over equipment, hulls and cargo, every motion calm, deliberate and hypnotic. And in this delicate orchestration, absence and endurance coexisted, tension absorbed into rhythm, reflection integrated with motion. Waves brushed shores with steady pulse, ocean and air merging into gentle cadence beneath human awareness. Sunlight diffused across water, soft and warm, illuminating shadows, hulls and gentle waves in harmonious rhythm. Soldiers exhaled subtly, presence and breath, synchronized with movement, observation and reflection. Every final mile carried both fragility and resilience, human and ocean intertwined in hypnotic flow. Guadalcanal breathed softly beneath them, patient, calm and enduring, holding memory and quiet absence in delicate balance. The final outlines of Japanese craft faded across the horizon, motion merging with mist, waves, and subtle light. Sailors exhaled with quiet acknowledgement, bodies relaxed yet attentive, movement slow and deliberate. Officers noted positions and timing, gestures minimal, voice low, rhythm hypnotic and unbroken. Crew members adjusted final cargo and equipment, motion measured, presence continuous, integrating all attention into calm flow. And in this expansive silence, tension dissolved into reflection, withdrawal became meditation, and absence settled into steady endurance. Waves brushed hulls, and distant bird calls rose softly across the still Pacific, subtle cadence reinforcing patient presence. The horizon expanded, islands and water reflecting calm, muted light, hypnotic and unhurried. Soldiers exhaled, bodies synchronized with motion and breath, integrating human effort with vast, patient space. Guadalcanal held its breath with them, vast, silent, and enduring, a witness to retreat, reflection, and gentle continuity. And so the withdrawal concluded, carried forward by hypnotic rhythm, calm presence, and the patient, enduring sea. The morning sun stretched softly across the Solomon Islands, painting waves and foliage in muted golds and greens, a quiet contrast to weeks of tension and endurance. Guadalcanal lay tranquil, yet the memory of steel, engines and presence lingered in subtle waves, rippling through water, sky, and mind alike. Sailors and marines reflected on the magnitude of what had passed, the fragile endurance of men and machines woven into the fabric of this small island. Across vast waters, families awaited news, hearts synchronized with the soft pulse of distant waves and letters carried across oceans. And in this patient span, reflection deepened, the weight of absence folding gently into calm awareness. Ocean currents whispered stories of movement, risk and courage, carrying memory from island to horizon. Every vessel, every soldier, every quiet action resonated across these waters, subtle echoes felt in motion and stillness alike. The Pacific, vast and patient, held both triumph and fatigue, a gentle witness to endurance and human striving. Stars had long faded into day, but their quiet rhythm persisted in the reflection of waves and steel. And so the island exhaled, holding echoes in its gentle, enduring arms. Naval officers recorded outcomes with measured care, tallying supplies, ships, and personnel, the numbers precise yet softened by human reflection. Sailors moved slowly, adjusting to calm waters and lighter duties, each gesture deliberate, hypnotic, and continuous. Officers whispered plans for repair, reinforcement, and rest, blending presence with calm reflection, their voices low, rhythmic, and soft. And in this deliberate pace, tension dissolved, replaced by patient consideration and awareness of enduring effort. Waves brushed hulls softly, carrying sound, memory, and motion in gentle continuity. Marines at Henderson Field walked slowly among quietened positions, exhaling fatigue, inhaling subtle air scents of salt, earth, and recovery. Letters and messages carried across islands and seas, linking distance with soft human resonance. The Pacific reflected sun, islands, and vessels with calm consistency, a mirror to human endurance and reflection. Sailors exhaled collectively, bodies aligned with rhythm of craft, crew, and water, motion blending with quiet thought. Guadalcanal held memory and reflection alike, patient, persistent, and expansive. Across distant waters, Japanese officers and sailors carried fatigue, disappointment, and endurance in equal measure, the weight of retreat soft yet present. Their movements were deliberate, each mile forward measured, attention folded into continuous rhythm, with ocean and sky. Crew members tended engines, repaired decks, and reflected on fragile victories and losses, blending motion with meditation. And in this gentle choreography, tension softened, anticipation folded into rhythm, awareness became calm presence. Waves brushed hulls and distant reefs alike, rhythmic, hypnotic, and persistent. The horizon stretched with muted light, expansive and patient, carrying human effort forward in soft continuity. Sailors inhaled and exhaled, synchronized with craft, crew, and gentle motion of water. Every action, subtle or deliberate, carried weight of history, endurance, and fragile hope across vast distance. Memory and reflection intertwined in the continuous pulse of sea, sky, and human presence. Guadalcanal remained quiet and patient, holding echoes of struggle, effort, and presence in gentle equilibrium. Families at home read letters, awaited telegrams, and felt the gentle pull of events across oceans. Hearts quietly tethered to distant islands. Mothers, fathers, and siblings exhaled softly, imagining sons and brothers moving through waves, engines, and shadowed nights. And in their quiet reflection, distance folded into awareness, anticipation softened into patient meditation. Waves brushed the coasts of distant lands, and the decks of ships alike, a continuous rhythm echoing through human consciousness. Sailors and marines remembered fallen comrades, their presence lingering gently across decks and earth alike. Officers maintained quiet awareness, integrating reflection with duty and observation, careful not to rush the steady pulse of life and responsibility. Every ship carried both cargo and memory. Each mile traveled a soft thread connecting island, ocean, and horizon. The Pacific whispered through currents and ripples, holding distance, endurance, and remembrance in gentle balance. Stars had faded long ago, yet their memory persisted in subtle reflections on water and steel. Guadalcanal exhaled patient, soft, and enduring, holding the human echo in its vast embrace. The sun climbed higher, warm light glimmering on gentle waves, casting reflective glints across steel and water alike. Sailors adjusted instruments, repaired decks, and exhaled fatigue, moving in quiet alignment with rhythm of day and ocean. Officers whispered guidance, hands and voice deliberate, motions continuous and hypnotic. And in this soft continuity, awareness expanded, reflection integrated with observation, tension folded gently into patience. Waves brushed hulls with persistent rhythm, sound and motion blending into hypnotic pulse beneath attentive human presence. Marines walked slowly across positions, observing, exhaling, integrating movement with reflection and calm awareness. Letters continued to flow, linking distance with memory, thought and quiet hope. Sailors inhaled and exhaled, movement synchronized with craft, crew, and ocean. Each gesture deliberate, gentle, and continuous. The horizon stretched far and wide, a vast and patient witness to endurance, loss, and fragile victory. Guadalcanal held every echo softly, patient, expansive, and enduring. Across islands and oceans, the subtle hum of distant ships carried forward, a quiet heartbeat threading through memory and space. Sailors felt presence in every subtle vibration, hands and eyes attuned to wave, wind, and horizon alike. Officers measured carefully, directing motion, observation, and reflection, integrating subtle awareness into hypnotic rhythm. And in this gentle orchestration, tension subsided, awareness expanded, anticipation folded into reflective calm. Waves brushed hulls like soft exhalations, every ripple a quiet meditation on distance, endurance, and fragile hope. Marines exhaled, inhaled, and moved slowly, integrating motion with observation, reflection with endurance. Letters, messages, and stories carried across vast distance, linking heart, mind, and horizon in gentle continuity. Stars had long faded, replaced by sun's muted glow, yet the rhythm persisted in reflection and motion alike. Each mile, each step, each exhalation carried resonance across ocean and time. Guadalcanal remained patient, silent, and watchful, cradling echoes in enduring equilibrium. Fleets dispersed across vast waters, vessels moving in quiet alignment, engines low, motion deliberate, hypnotic. Sailors tended craft, crew, and cargo with careful attention. Awareness folded into every gesture, breath, and step. Officers guided direction softly, integrating observation and reflection into continuous rhythm, maintaining calm presence across miles. And in this measured flow, tension softened, endurance became meditation, anticipation merged with reflection. Waves brushed hulls gently, sound blending with motion, memory and soft wind across decks and distant shores. Marines exhaled, walked slowly, reflected quietly, integrating observation, awareness, and subtle rhythm into each gesture. Letters arrived and were sent, linking distant hearts, reinforcing fragile hope and connection across patient oceans. Sailors synchronized breath, motion, and awareness with craft, crew, and gentle pulse of water. Each mile carried reflection, memory, and subtle endurance, soft and persistent. Guadalcanal held space for echoes, presence, and continuity, patient, calm, and expansive. By late afternoon, calm settled fully across islands and oceans, a quiet, hypnotic rhythm of water, sky, and human presence. Sailors exhaled deeply, bodies moving in gentle alignment with craft, crew, and waves. Attention folded into reflective awareness. Officers maintained subtle observation, gestures and commands low, deliberate, continuous, integrating rhythm with calm meditation. And in this expansive flow, tension faded, endurance became reflection, and anticipation folded gently into hypnotic presence. Waves brushed hulls, soft and persistent, carrying memory and human effort across quiet seas. Marines observed the landscape, inhaled and exhaled. Presence integrated with reflection and continuous attention. Letters, messages, and thoughts traced invisible threads across water and sky, linking distance with soft resonance of memory. Stars had faded, sun waned, yet hypnotic rhythm persisted across ocean and deck alike. Each breath, gesture, and mile carried calm continuity, integrating fragile victory, effort, and endurance. Guadalcanal exhaled softly, patient, expansive, and enduring, holding echoes across Pacific waters with quiet grace. The waters around Guadalcanal have long since settled into a gentle rhythm, a timeless cadence that whispers of what once passed across these seas. Sunlight ripples across calm waves, glinting softly on the gentle rise and fall of water, reflecting the memory of steel and presence now resting beneath. Ships that once roared with engines and carried men into peril now lie silent, their forms softened by time and coral, hidden yet present beneath tranquil currents. Divers and historians visit occasionally, tracing the outlines of hulls and decks, moving slowly, reverently, in rhythm with water and thought. And in this gentle exploration, the ocean keeps its secrets, folding history into quiet embrace, holding echoes without urgency or judgment. The scent of salt, earth, and the faint hint of sun-warmed waves carries through each inhalation, blending awareness with reflection. Each wave brushes the surface with a soft, persistent pulse, as if whispering the endurance, courage, and fragility of those who traversed it. Above, gulls drift with effortless rhythm, calling softly to one another, their wings cutting through the tranquil air. The island itself seems to exhale slowly, holding memory in patient, expansive stillness. And so the Pacific stretches endlessly, cradling echoes of human endeavor beneath patient, unhurried waves. Families far away continue to feel subtle ripples, the legacy of endurance and loss transmitted quietly through letters, stories, and memory. Sons and brothers once aboard ships are remembered softly in homes, their presence echoed in reflections on calm waters and gentle winds. Sailors long returned carry their own quiet reflection, the ocean etched into their memory like a soft pulse beneath consciousness. And in this slow integration, distance folds into thought, presence merges with remembrance, and echoes settle into gentle continuity. Waves brush the shore and hulls alike, a hypnotic rhythm of motion and memory, threading through mind, water, and horizon. Birds drift overhead, their effortless glide mirrored in the unhurried sway of vessels at anchor, subtle and continuous. The coral and reef below cradle resting ships, integrating decay with life, movement with stasis, as time moves slowly and without haste. Every breath, exhalation, and soft step carries resonance of courage, endurance, and human fragility across water and space. The Pacific holds both absence and memory, patient, expansive, and enduring like an eternal witness. And so the ocean continues, carrying echoes forward into quiet eternity. At night, the waters shimmer under moonlight, gentle ripples reflecting distant stars, a soft rhythm of light, motion, and presence. Sailors long gone drift silently in memory, lives woven into the unbroken pulse of ocean, sky, and sand. Divers pause in quiet reverence, their movements slow, breaths measured, awareness attuned to history, held beneath currents. And in this continuous hypnotic flow, tension dissolves, replaced by reflection, patience, and gentle continuity. Waves brush softly against coral and hull, a rhythm persistent and soothing, like whispered recollection carried on water. Ships lie quietly in their watery beds, forms softened yet distinct, echoing past courage and quiet suffering in every shadowed line. The Pacific breathes calmly, embracing presence, absence, and memory alike, patient and enduring. Each subtle sway, each ripple across the surface, integrates history with stillness, human and ocean bound in gentle resonance. Stars above trace arcs across sky and reflection alike, timeless witnesses to passage, endurance, and fragile triumph. And so, the ocean hums softly, preserving echoes with patient, unhurried grace. Memorials on distant shores keep names and stories alive, their presence gentle, respectful, and hypnotically persistent. Families gather in soft reflection, tracing memory in whispers, letters, and quiet remembrance, a human echo alongside the patient sea. Sailors and marines visit occasionally, exhaling fatigue and inhaling calm awareness, presence folded into reflection and observation. And in this measured rhythm, absence becomes meditation, memory becomes presence, and endurance folds softly into stillness. Waves brush coasts and anchored craft alike, soft arcs of water folding history into gentle, continuous pulse. Every breath, step, and exhalation carries subtle reflection, integrating courage, fragility, and endurance into unhurried rhythm. The Pacific itself holds every gesture softly, expansively, without hurry or judgment, a quiet keeper of stories. Even rusting steel and weathered wood tell silent tales of human striving beneath patient currents. Sunlight warms the water slowly, illuminating outlines beneath in gentle gold and green, soft and continuous. And so the ocean remains, a quiet, enduring witness, carrying echoes into eternity. Below the surface, coral and fish move with natural rhythm, life continuing even as steel rests, and memory lingers. Divers observe, exhaling slowly, moving with hypnotic patience, allowing the sea to integrate human presence and absence seamlessly. Wrecks appear like monuments, their outlines softened by time, yet still communicating past tension, effort, and endurance. And in this quiet communion, reflection spreads gently, carrying both memory and motion across human consciousness and ocean alike. Waves brush surfaces with soft insistence, patterns repeating endlessly, hypnotic in rhythm and sound. Light filters through water in slow shafts, illuminating details with calm, persistent attention. Each diver's movement, each gentle exhalation becomes part of this continuum, blending human effort with timeless oceanic rhythm. Ships that once thundered with life now breathe softly through water, presence embedded in memory, endurance preserved in gentle sway. Fish drift lazily through corridors of steel and coral, unconcerned yet quietly part of the narrative. And so the Pacific whispers softly, carrying history, courage, and quiet reflection across eternity. Even far from Guadalcanal, the Pacific's echoes persist, currents threading memory across islands, shores, and distant horizons. Sailors' stories circulate quietly, letters, journals, and memories, linking presence and absence in hypnotic continuity. Waves brush coastlines, hulls, and reefs alike, a gentle, unbroken rhythm threading human reflection with oceanic patience. And in this persistent flow, history folds gently into the present. Memory integrates with awareness, and endurance becomes soft meditation. Birds drift across air, gentle arcs, and soft calls blending with whispering wind and patient waves. Divers pause at wrecks, hands and eyes, careful, exhaling and inhaling, in synchrony with subtle ocean rhythm. Every soft motion, every reflection, every whisper of water carries stories forward in hypnotic pulse, patient and unhurried. The Pacific holds all echoes, vast, enduring, and gentle, a witness beyond reckoning. Time stretches slowly, integrating presence, absence, and history into continuous calm. And so the ocean remembers, patient, hypnotic, and eternal. As twilight softens the horizon, waters darken to muted blue, calm and persistent. A final exhalation of day. Sailors long returned reflect, exhaling the past while inhaling awareness of ocean, distance, and memory. Waves brush gently across hulls, reefs, and distant shores, rhythm continuous, hypnotic and soothing. And in this quiet evening, history folds softly into presence. Absence merges with endurance, and reflection becomes calm meditation. Coral glows faintly beneath water. Vessels rest in patient permanence, integrating steel, memory, and life beneath waves. Divers exhale slowly, hands tracing contours with soft, deliberate rhythm, absorbing the ocean's patient embrace. Birds and wind soften across water, gentle arcs and whispers blending seamlessly with the pulse of sea and memory. Every motion, breath, and wave carries resonance, human and ocean intertwined in subtle, enduring flow. The Pacific stretches endlessly, carrying echoes forward, patient, hypnotic, and soft. And so the ocean continues, remembering with calm persistence, cradling courage, endurance, and quiet reflection in its eternal arms. Even under starlit night, the Pacific hums with quiet memory, waves brushing endlessly across hulls, reefs, and distant shores. Sailors' stories linger in soft recollection, echoes traveling beyond islands, time, and horizon. Divers exhale with gentle rhythm, movement synchronized with patient currents, observing history held beneath water with reverent calm. And in this continuous flow, reflection becomes meditation, presence integrates with memory, and the ocean carries endurance softly and endlessly. Waves ripple like gentle heartbeat, persistent, soothing, hypnotic, threading history, courage, and fragility across consciousness. Ships, coral, and fish share the pulse, stillness, and motion intertwined, creating hypnotic continuity beneath darkened waters. Letters, memories, and distant recollections travel in parallel, human echoes mirrored by the patient ocean. Each exhalation, each wave, each subtle motion carries presence, absence, and remembrance across vast, gentle waters. Time stretches indefinitely, ocean and human memory woven into quiet, hypnotic tapestry. And so the Pacific keeps its secrets softly, patiently, and eternally, carrying echoes across all horizons. The first light of a new day rises slowly, gentle as a soft exhalation across tranquil waters, whispering continuity. Sailors, marines, and families exhale with the rhythm of remembrance, integrating past endurance into present reflection. Waves brush hulls, reefs, and shores with persistent, hypnotic cadence, carrying memory forward in quiet, unhurried pulse. And in this calm continuity, history, courage, and fragility merge seamlessly into soft meditation. Divers trace wrecks with deliberate rhythm, exhaling fatigue, inhaling calm awareness, presence folded into gentle reflection. Birds drift overhead, arcs of wings and soft calls echoing hypnotic, unhurried rhythm with wind and waves. The ocean breathes slowly, expansive, patient, holding absence, presence, and memory in continuous embrace. Every wave, exhalation, and subtle motion carries resonance of endurance and human fragility across vast space. Stars fade as sun rises fully, yet hypnotic rhythm persists, weaving ocean, memory, and reflection into soft eternity. And so the ocean remembers, patient, expansive, and enduring, carrying every echo gently into eternity.